Hey everyone, happy Tuesday, and welcome to GameFace, episode 287 on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield, the founder of Sifted, and the host of GameFace, alongside my good compadre, Matt Kyle. What's going on, Matt?
Not much.
The big news happening in the games industry.
People just won't stop buying things.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy what's been going on in the last couple weeks. We're going to dive into, obviously, PlayStation buying Bungie. We're going to talk about that right off the top. We got a big game to talk about in today's show. We're going to talk about Pokemon Legends Arceus, whatever the hell. I think we're going to decide on Arceus at this point.
No, it's Arceus.
It is Arceus.
Definitely Arceus.
Oh, crap. Okay.
You have an Arc phone. It's clearly Arceus.
That's true. That's a good point. That's a really good point. That's it. All right.
There's a bunch of revelations in this that the Pokemon fandom is having trouble with.
We'll talk about it. I'm excited to talk about that game. More than like a lot of games we've talked about lately. Mm-hmm. It's definitely an interesting topic to discuss, and we're going to do that. Not a lot of housekeeping today. We have 4 episodes left here in this studio before we're going to be kicked out and moved out to... we don't know yet. We're still looking for our new studio. We have today and then 3 more episodes in February before we get out of here. We closed the entries for the Sifted Fantasy Challenge. Hopefully you guys got in before it ended. We did everything we could. We posted it everywhere on our Facebook, on our Twitter like 3 times. I tweeted it from my personal account at Dinfire. I think we did everything that we could have to get you guys in. But anyway, now the entries are done. You can actually go back to the page where you put your entries in, and you can see there's already some games where scores have started to trickle in, so the live leaderboard there is actually worth something already. And I would bookmark that page and just check back every month, 2 months, and see how your team's doing and see how you're lining up against the folks like Matt and I. But anyway, Matt, how was your week? Anything exciting going on?
Not especially. Pokemon, help somebody move.
Wow.
Very exciting.
I saw a tweet or something the other day where someone said, after 35, you pay for movers. Because your friends...
Oh, I did, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because your friends are so old...
But there's still, like, other stuff you gotta unpack. And do.
Yeah. Because your friends are so old that asking them to help you move at that point is really kind of being a jerk.
Yeah.
Because they're going to feel, like... bad if they don't, but they shouldn't be asked to help you move at that age. So
there's a point where it's like I'm not carrying a washer up a flight of stairs
right,
for pizza
or a couch. Not happening anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think I would survive a move up like 2 flights of stairs anymore. So interesting. We almost started the show late today, by the way. We got locked out. Matt hadn't even got here yet, and I went out to use the bathroom. When I went out, there were still people in our office. And while I was in the bathroom, apparently everyone left. And luckily, someone came back from lunch and let us in at the last minute, just explaining the tweet that we sent out there a couple minutes ago, explaining that it may be a little late. But fortunately, everything worked out, and we're here right at 1 o'clock. Let's head to chat before we get into the show proper to see what's going on. Oh, let's see. We've already hit... Wow. Already we hit the hype train. In the first, there it is, hype, in the first, 5 minutes of the show. That's awesome. Let's see what we got here. I can't tell where the last show ended and this one started. Oh, here we go. Oh, first time chat from viewer, Bobo Mojo. Thanks for chatting, man. Welcome to the show. Hope you enjoy it. Mazo Ren, thank you for Twitch Prime. El Guapo 3385, thanks for Twitch Prime. Liberal Hack, gifting the tier 1 subs to the crew in our chat. Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Andy T. Monahan doing the same thing. That's great. Darmus, thank you for Twitch Prime. Bobo Mojo, thank you for the bits, man. Jose Holiday, thank you for the bits. You guys are awesome. This is great. What else? Justin Horman, Bangarang, 1,000 bits. You guys are awesome. Keep going up. That's what Shaniki says. I agree with that 1,000%. So awesome. Thanks, guys. We got the show off to a good start today. Glad we made it in right on time. That's for sure. Okay, let's kick off the show. I think we're ready to rock here. We're going to kick things off. No big surprise. We're going to talk right off the top about PlayStation buying Bungie. Matt, how much did this catch you off guard?
Pretty off guard. I mean,
me too.
I was expecting some kind of Sony'd been talking about it, we're gonna look into getting some things, over back when Microsoft started snapping up devs last year. And, I don't think Bungie was on my list of expectations.
No, not at all.
In part because I would think Bungie's tired of being bought. Like, it's like, oh, we got bought by Microsoft. Oh, we don't like this anymore. We're leaving. We got bought by Activision. Oh, we don't like this anymore. We're leaving.
Yeah.
And now we're bought. I mean,
No.
the deal they're striking here is basically for autonomy in exchange for some.
Imagine if you were a founder at Bungie and you have now been paid out.
Yeah, that's a lot of paying.
3 times.
I mean, I don't know how those. I think the founders are gone.
Probably.
Like Jason Jones and those guys.
If there's
are
anyone
gone.
left that was a part of the OG Bungie crew, though, that employee has been paid.
Yeah.
It's really crazy to think about. Why Bungie was off of my radar, those reasons, but also because it makes one game.
Right. But I think that's sort of like the strategy that maybe people are missing is like, obviously this is not a direct response to Microsoft buying Activision because this deal would have taken 6 months to a year to put together. Pulling the trigger now might have been influenced by it, especially at the high price. I think they're overpaying for Bungie for sure.
Here's what I think about that.
It feels like a panic buy to some degree, just in terms of the fact that they're paying half of what Microsoft paid for Bethesda for Bungie.
Yeah.
My theory is just that they want an experienced first-person shooter dev in their back pocket in case Microsoft does in fact pull Call of Duty from PlayStation platforms in years from now.
Yeah.
They want some, or maybe they want to revamp Killzone. Who knows? Having Bungie there to do stuff for you is probably a good move. And if you can fund them to do more than one game, they probably will.
They said they already have another project in development.
Yeah,
Bungie.
So I'm sure that having them at least, even if you're still going multi-platform, having them be the lead. Having PlayStation be the lead platform that gets everything first is still something, and it was clearly a huge advantage for them with Call of Duty. So they might just be looking for that kind of leverage. The question remains, can you make something that nothing's going to catch Call of Duty, but can you make something that's as appealing, as competitive? I mean, we've seen attempts at similar things happen that just don't even. Look at Battlefield 2042 right now. It's a disaster.
Yeah, and somehow it's still sold.
Still sold, but it's it's the concurrent players on Steam are below 5.
Yeah,
and even today or was it yesterday they were talking about oh, we'll get legacy features like scoreboards and voice chat in sooner, but it's not our immediate concern. I'm like,
oh man,
why can't I talk to people like it's 2005 in your game? It's bizarre. It's just so yeah. Call of Duty, and also as I always say, execution. You can make a Call of Duty clone all day, but unless it feels as good as what Infinity Ward or
Bungie's gunplay
Treyarch makes,
feels pretty damn good.
Yeah. So I think
those headshots feel real.
Yeah, Bungie
real
is
satisfying.
Bungie is definitely on par. If anyone can do it, they can.
Yeah.
So we'll see what they come up with in 3 years, I guess.
Here's what I think, Matt, about
it's just
the timing.
It's just was it 3.8 billion?
Yes.
That is a lot of money
it's insane,
for Bungie.
Matt. And here's what I think happened. So I agree with you. This has been they've been talking to Bungie for a while.
Yeah, and rumor is that Microsoft was also talking to Bungie. Bungie has apparently been on the sales block for a while now.
Yeah. So I do believe PlayStation was talking to them for a while. I do think that the deals that Microsoft has announced in the last 2 months between Bethesda and Activision Blizzard has stepped up the timeline a little bit for Sony, and I also feel like it stepped up the price. So that's the most staggering thing to me is how much they've paid.
Yeah, I think there has to be a little bit of hey, Microsoft would throw this at us without blinking kind of thing, and that's what we want. We want that, and we want you to not tell us what to do. And I guess they got it.
Seems like they had all the leverage in the negotiations.
It really does.
Because they got way more money than I think they're worth.
Yeah. Well, also, I guess on the flip side...
And they can release games for other platforms.
But on the flip side, I guess, if you're Sony and your stable is almost entirely single-player epic action RPG things, and you don't have a competitive multiplayer action game, really, and you want something that's sort of COD adjacent, who else are you going to buy right now? Who else is out there?
There aren't many. There aren't many studios that make really good shooters that are out there and available.
Nobody out there. Certainly that would be up for sale. And at this point, your options as Sony were probably to buy them or From. And From is just not going to fill an important void. Obviously From makes great games, but they make great games that sell 3 to 5 million copies. You're looking for something that sells 15.
And I don't even know if Bungie can accomplish that.
No,
at
I
this
mean,
point.
even Bungie, there's no guarantee they're going to make something that's going to be a runaway hit. I mean, look what happened with Anthem.
Right.
Like
we thought
you could get another Anthem.
You could
easily.
Yeah. And the craziest part of this all is that Sony is making no bones about it that all Bungie's games are going to continue to be multi-platform.
Yeah, like they're not changing anything.
This isn't like,
and they are saying it like very directly, unlike Phil.
This isn't
like,
Phil Spencer saying well, case by case.
This is not like the weird sort of like we're going to say something that says it's still going to be there, but we're going to cover us if we change our mind. Sony's just saying like we aren't changing anything about this. Bungie themselves are going to decide what they're going to basically self-publish. They're going to decide what platforms their games go on.
Yeah.
That's it.
Here's some quotes from an excellent gamesindustry.biz article. I do encourage you to go and read the whole article. They did a great job on it. They had great access to some Sony executives. Pete Parsons says, the first thing to say unequivocally is that Bungie will stay an independent multi-platform studio and publisher. And I have spoken about many things over recent months, and this was one of the first and actually easiest and most straightforward conclusions we reached together. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants the extremely large Destiny 2 community, whatever platform they're on, to be able to continue to enjoy their Destiny 2 experiences, and that approach will apply to future Bungie releases. This is unequivocal. There's no gray area. This was obviously negotiated, and I do take some umbrage with that quote in where he says that like they reached this conclusion just organically. Mm-hmm. I don't believe that at all. Like, I believe that Bungie was like, well, if we make this deal, then we would like to stay multi-platform. And I feel like Sony may have pushed back on that, and then once Microsoft makes its big purchases, suddenly Sony is like, okay.
All right, like it has to be a thing where it's like they just get first dibs on things.
Right.
You know, timed exclusive like DLC. You know, like I'm sure Destiny expansions will come to PlayStation like 3 to 6 months before any other
You think
platform.
That much?
Yeah. I think they've done stuff like that before.
Yeah. That seems like a lot of time. I wonder if that's
exclusive
even written.
options, like you'll get PlayStation themed weapon skins or like things like that, but like nothing that would like revolutionize which platform you want to play that game on or that kind of thing. I guarantee you, Destiny stuff won't be on Game Pass anymore.
Yeah, I don't know. It might.
I don't know. Yeah, if Microsoft wants to give them money, which then in turn gives Sony money, like who knows?
I mean, there's the angle, right?
There's your first step. Like there's a Sony-owned game on Game Pass.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel here's another quote from Sony. We are starting to go multi-platform. You've seen that. We have an aggressive roadmap with live services and the opportunity to work with and particularly learn from the brilliant and talented people from Bungie. That is going to considerably accelerate the journey we find ourselves on. Philosophically, this isn't about pulling things into the PlayStation world. This is about building huge and wonderful new worlds together. First of all, I think they overpaid. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would never have thought Bungie would go for that much.
No. And so...
certainly not in normal times.
Do you think part of PlayStation's strategy with this is like, okay, you're going to demand that your games stay multi-platform because your community is multi-platform and you don't want to split them up and tear them away from whatever console they've bought or whatever. Mm-hmm. But do you think PlayStation is counting on, okay, Destiny 3 or whatever the next Bungie game is, making money off of Microsoft's audience like it did with MLB The Show 21, and it's now going to do it with MLB The Show 22? Do you think Sony's starting to understand like there's certain stuff that it's actually advantageous for us to release it on other platforms?
Yeah, I mean, certainly MLB makes sense as the first move on that. I guess that is on Game Pass. MLB makes sense as the first move on that, largely because you are paying a license. Like they don't wholly own that; they have to pay a license and
to MLB. Yeah,
and the more income and revenue they can get from just in general wherever that source may be, the better it's going to be in terms of making profit over having to pay that license in the first place. Moving towards their more prestige stuff, like are we going to see God of War on Xbox? No, I don't think so. But the stuff that's more peripheral, like the stuff that's or like Destiny, which is a thing that already existed on everything, like that also doesn't project any weakness to continue having that on there.
Yeah. Do you believe this? Do you believe that all Bungie's games will continue to be multi-platform, or do you think
I think so.
5 years there will be? Because what people forget about this stuff, and I mentioned this on Good Morning.
That statement is very concrete. like if they go back on that, they're going to have to explain themselves, basically.
Well, will people remember, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Because here's the other thing. PlayStation fans will be happy if that happens. They're not going to complain.
No, people will remember that for sure.
But I feel like when stuff like this happens, people always think about what's going to happen now. I mentioned this on this morning's episode of Good Morning Gaming. People always think about, okay, what's the next year? What's the next 2 years? These purchases are forever. Like, what happens 6 years from now, 8 years from now, 12 years from now? Are people going to remember the stuff that was said in this gamesindustry.biz article?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah.
Will they care?
I mean, yeah, in the sense that they're going to say, hey, this is completely opposite what they said when they bought them.
Yeah.
And then that will be the end. Like,
but what if Bungie...
what can you do? Like,
right. What if Bungie comes out and says, we agree with this? We're totally cool with it. Does that change anything?
Well, it changes their mind, apparently.
I mean, in the eyes of fans, if they know Bungie's not being forced to do it.
We know that nobody's going to actually do anything about it. You're either going to not play it because you don't have a PlayStation, or you're going to play it anyway on PlayStation and switch platforms. Like, nobody actually boycotts anything.
Do you think this is more Sony trying to get in on games as a service, recurring revenue, having those?
I mean, I know they clearly want something like that, but I think it's also having a shooter developer in the stable. Like, they don't have anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they had Guerrilla making Killzone, but clearly Guerrilla has moved on to open world action RPGs.
Yeah, Insomniac,
and they're better at that
for a while. Both of them, Insomniac and Guerrilla, are better off.
They're both better doing
shooters.
other things.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. And Bungie, that's pretty much all Bungie's made. There's Oni, which was not great.
Bungie doesn't own that anymore.
Yeah.
Bungie doesn't own Myth and Oni anymore.
Right.
Take-Two has those, I think.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, Bungie doesn't have a lot of experience making anything but shooters. So it is kind of a puzzle piece fit where it kind of snaps in.
They are also, it also puts them, if Sony wants to do another, like a game as a service thing with another internal developer, they've got Bungie there to advise, because Bungie certainly knows what it is to start one of those from scratch and have to figure out how to do it correctly on the fly. People forget how rough Destiny 1 was when it launched and how much they learned over the first couple years. They've refined Destiny 2 into a really slick machine. I think having just that experience on board is going to be good for Sony.
Are you surprised that Sony Corp signed off on this?
I'm a little surprised Sony Corp had that much money laying around. I don't quite see the immediate. I mean, it has to be a long-term thing. Like, it has to be like, this is going to be a valuable asset in the stable for the next decade or more,
right,
kind of thing. It's a lot of money. That's
to make back.
That's a third of a Star Wars to pay for that. Yeah, it's a lot of money for that.
Was this a good idea, Matt? What do you think?
I think having Bungie in the stable is a good move. That amount of money is a lot to justify, and long term maybe it will. But I do think I think they were worth more right now because of how much Microsoft is buying stuff.
I think all publishers right now are worth more.
Yeah, not because of Activision specifically, but just because Microsoft's on that tear. Do I think it's going to influence anything beyond that? Not really. I mean, Sony's clearly got a couple of other acquisitions in the pipeline. They hinted at that already. My guess would be that if you're talking about big purchases, their next move would be Square.
Would it have been smarter to keep the money that they're spending on Bungie and put it towards something bigger?
That's not for me to say.
Yeah.
I don't know what Sony's planning.
No, I'm saying from your perspective. Do you think it would have been smarter to spend double that and get Ubisoft?
No. I don't know enough about the internal plan to have an opinion on that. Also, I think Ubisoft would cost way more than that.
Yeah.
Way
I just looked at their valuation not long ago, and I was shocked at how low it was.
Yeah, but if you actually came down to buying it, I think you'd be in the 10 to 15 billion range for that easily.
So, but I mean, I would say buying Ubisoft for 10 billion is better than buying Bungie for 3 billion. I would rather save that $3 billion and put it towards buying Ubisoft. But it doesn't fit as well.
Except Sony already knows how to make the games Ubisoft makes better than Ubisoft.
Right. That was my point. That it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
It's not as good a fit as
Bungie. Bungie fills a gap in their crew, basically.
Yeah.
And like that amount of money is a lot, and it's probably more than they should have paid. But given the situation, and given that there's no one else really on the market that can do what Bungie does, it's probably just what it was worth at the time.
Yeah,
and it's either that or let Microsoft have it, and you don't want Microsoft to have that because then you have nothing in that regard. And Microsoft's got 3 top tier shooter companies in their stable. They got them, and they got 343, and they got the Coalition, or whatever it was. Is that right? The Coalition.
Mm-hmm. And the Initiative, which is working on Perfect
And the
Dark.
Initiative, I forget about them.
Yeah.
They got a lot of shooters up there. Sony has nothing, unless they want to like shift Insomniac or Guerrilla back to that, and I don't think anybody thinks that's a good idea. So, I think it's just filling a hole in their roster, frankly. And the price happened to go up
because that's a high price
because of everything that's happened. Yeah, but that happens in everything. Like it's worth what it's worth.
Where is this headed, Matt? Because when people were setting off the alarm bells after Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard, I was like, no. There's still hundreds or, at least dozens of big publishers left out there. And, it's definitely still, we're not headed towards a monopoly or antitrust issues or anything like that.
This is not related to anything like that.
But do you think this is going to...
You can't have a monopoly on ideas.
Yeah. But do you think this is going to keep happening?
I think to some degree. Like, I don't know. I don't think anyone's going to buy Ubisoft or like EA. I wish someone would buy. I wish someone would buy EA's Vault. Mm-hmm. You want to do me a favor? Buy EA's Vault and bring back all the stuff that they've been sitting on for decades without using them. Where's my Wing Commander? Where's my Starflight? Where's my Desert Strike? I could go on and on and on and on about all the stuff EA has and doesn't do anything with. Somebody buy Konami, for the love of God. Like, get that stuff
seems like a
away
really
from
smart
them.
purchase to me.
You've got Metal Gear and Castlevania and Silent Hill sitting there. Those are all gold IP. Like, you could do something amazing with all of those. The fact that the low reputation of several of those franchises is purely due to Konami's mishandling of them.
It's not that fans have lost their reverence for them.
No, it's not that they can't be great games.
Right.
It's that Konami screwed around with Castlevania and Silent Hill for the entire 21st century and didn't know what they were doing. A Sony, a Microsoft, or even Nintendo could do something really incredible with the Konami IPs. I think it's more likely that if Sony's going to make another big publisher purchase, they're going to move on Square. Square would make the most sense there. I don't know if Square is interested in being sold.
Yeah.
But if there's one brand that feels like it would just nestle right into the Sony family, it would be Square, because of how closely people identify Final Fantasy and most of their output with PlayStation.
Yeah, and it also has a bunch of Western studios.
Yeah,
too.
It's got all the Tomb Raider stuff, and all. I mean, that would be a really solid buy. It'd just be very expensive.
I mean, I think that would probably be the best bang for the buck.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know. I do think that this Bungie deal was a mistake. If it got all these games exclusively and they hadn't sort of made this handshake of like, no, we're going to keep putting our stuff out for other platforms, it would make more sense to me. But if you're going to put stuff out multi-platform, it's going to take away sales from PlayStation. And if you're talking about games as a service, that's a daily loss of money. If you don't have everybody playing that game on your platform, you're losing money every day from that. Because when people paying for microtransactions and cosmetics and whatever other crap.
But this is the mindset shift that is going to have to happen, that people like Pactor and to some degree you don't seem to get. Is it's not about taking the hardware out of the equation. It's not about locking people into a certain platform that you have to. It's about realizing that you cannot corral people on one platform anymore. And it's better to have experts on this genre and this successful thing on all platforms, for even if it's just a PR move, even if you're losing some microtransaction revenue, which some of which is going to go to Bungie, which benefits you as the owner of Bungie. You just have to accept that is not in the cards for Sony. It might be in the cards for Nintendo. They control things with more of an iron fist, and I would imagine going forward. Frankly, if there's anyone that's going to buy Ubisoft, it's Nintendo, which I would mourn.
Well, Nintendo has so many holes.
I mean, the most likely big purchase for Nintendo would be Bandai Namco. But like they've flirted with that multiple times.
Well, they also co-develop stuff with Bandai Namco, and They have a great working relationship.
Yeah, but the working relationships for Nintendo are Bandai Namco and Ubisoft, and Namco feels like they would be pretty happy to not worry about their own financial independence anymore at this point, outside of Tekken maybe.
But what are you getting with Bandai Namco?
You're getting more teams you don't have to set up yourself. Yeah. That's really it.
Yeah, because the IP can go away. They're just deals.
And they haven't enhanced
they're all
Nintendo's IP.
Third-party IP.
Right, and they also haven't enhanced Nintendo's IP when they worked on them.
They haven't made their games better.
No,
in
the
fact,
Star
a lot
Fox
of them
game wasn't
canceled
good.
Or they're trash.
Yeah, and they had to restart Metroid Prime 4. But if there's anything on the shopping block, it would be that. And Ubisoft, just because they have the best relationship with them, they've worked with them and let them handle Mario, for God's sake. That's a vote of confidence right there.
Does Nintendo need to do anything?
I don't think they do.
To me, it doesn't seem like it needs to get involved.
Nintendo's not interested in this. It's the same thing with it's fun to speculate about it, but Nintendo doesn't. I don't think Nintendo wants to do that. I don't think Nintendo wants more teams to manage. They have enough trouble managing the ones they have and getting them to have regular output. Except for HAL Laboratory. You can't stop those guys. Those.
Yeah. Matt, my question though.
Forget no one can stop Mr. Domino. No one can stop the Kirby developers.
To your point earlier about how you're saying Pactor and me to a certain extent need to get over this idea of you buy something and you keep it on your platform. Why buy Bungie then? Because you're going to get Bungie's games on your platform anyway.
I'm going to say it for a fifth time. Because you want experts on that genre in your stable. You want that expertise on your side. You want people that
But they're not on your side. They're on everyone's side.
But they're on your side when it comes to internal discussions, internal teaching, internal work. They are still they're not going to go
That's a lot of money to pay for something I could probably tell them.
You can't tell them exactly how to do it from a programming standpoint. You can't do it for them. You can't dig into the Destiny 2 code and show them how they did this and how it works.
I mean,
that is expertise you cannot find anywhere else in the industry right now.
That's a weak argument, man.
No, it's not. It's actually the best possible reason to buy something.
There are tons of people making games as a service.
Not on the level of Destiny 2.
Destiny's not that successful. It only
doesn't matter. I'm not talking about.
It generates $500 million of revenue a year.
I'm not talking about successful. I'm talking about expertise, long-term work. Solid work.
I get that, Matt. There's hundreds of people who have the same expertise. Who know how to make a game as a service that works with microtransactions and cosmetics and all that stuff.
But not successfully in terms of the slick package, not in terms of also balancing it with gameplay that is unmatched in that genre. It is.
I'll disagree with you on that one.
Well, someone spent $3.8 billion because I'm right. So we'll see if it pays off for them, because the problem is
how do you know you're right? This deal hasn't even signed yet.
Because that's what they're after. That's why they're buying.
They said it. They wrote it. They quoted it. I get that. That doesn't mean it's true.
The only X factor here is whether they can come up with something, another IP that isn't Destiny. Their subsequent projects, are they going to also be successful? Are you going to avoid another Anthem? But in terms of what they're going to get internally, to me, I don't know what Vincent's saying there.
I mean, look, I've played
3.6 million. It was billion. It was billion.
Yeah.
Billion.
I don't know what he's talking about. I'm gassy. Nolan Elric.
I mean, there's an element of desperation here, but if they have the money to spend on it, and that's what they want, there's no other better purchase if that's what they're after. That's the thing.
I've played so many games as a service since Destiny 2 came out, and I agree. The shooting feels great in Destiny 2.
Go find
hire the gameplay programmer from frickin' Bungie. Throw money at him. You don't spend $3.8 billion
because
for that.
No one person did that. That's the whole point.
But you can get the information from one person.
It's not about necessarily just the information. It's about the process. It's about having them involved. It's having them consulting. There is an advantage to having those people.
Way too much money to pay for that. It just is.
Apparently, Sony disagrees.
Sony's desperate though right now. Let's be honest.
It's about knowledge. It's not about value.
It's about both.
It will be eventually,
maybe.
But having that expertise, being able to have input on all their other projects internally, the things they do get to keep on their platform, is going to be worth something to them. That's part of what this is.
I mean, Sony first party doesn't make any shooters, so
not yet.
I mean, who do you get to do that?
Bend?
Get Gorilla back on it again? I don't think they're going to do that. I doubt it.
I don't think they're going to put Gorilla on it, but I think you have other studios that are not doing anything of note right now, like Sony Bend.
Yeah.
And like you can go around and you could even start a new
Dude,
studio.
putting
or something.
Sony Ben on an FPS would be a huge mistake.
You don't know that if they got Bungie advising them, they might get somewhere. But Bend is not untalented. They just didn't quite know what they were making when it came to.
They've just never made a shooter, like ever.
No, neither had Bungie until they did.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a bad purchase, and I
don't think
it would make more sense to me if, in fact, whatever they're going to build or whatever's coming next from them.
I think it's a bad price. But I don't think there was a way to avoid that price right now without risking Microsoft snapping them up, because Microsoft could spend that money and not even notice it on the books.
It can keep doing that, though.
Yeah, of course it can.
Like, forever.
Of course it can. I mean,
so it's like, it feels like it's a slippery slope that PlayStation finally decided to step on, and to me, now it's going like this. Like,
no.
I don't know, man.
This is a one moment. They decided they wanted this so bad they were going to spend that kind of money on it. And Sony can be impenetrable at times, but if there's one thing that we should have learned over the last several years is that every time Sony does stuff and you think they're crazy, they're not.
Yeah.
Like, how crazy you think they were when they skipped E3? When they started, all that worked just fine. They know what they're doing.
It's funny, though.
But I think they got caught flat-footed on this, because I don't think they expected or wanted to pay that much money for Bungie. But what Microsoft has been doing over the last couple of years created that demand for them, and I think Bungie was able to go with no evidence, but I think Bungie was able to go to them and be like, "We want this much,
and we want it to be multi-platform.
We want all these things, and like otherwise you don't get us." And they're going to probably, because clearly Bungie was wanting to sell. Right, because because the rumor is that Microsoft's looking at them, other people are looking at them.
Bungie's line is that it chose Sony or PlayStation because it felt like it was the company that could slide it into the cultural stuff like TV and film.
I bet that's true.
I agree with that. I think that probably does make sense.
And I bet it also meant...
better than being bought by Netflix.
I bet they also weren't going to be able to do that give us complete independence thing with Microsoft.
Yeah.
Because Microsoft would be like, no, you just joined the blob like everybody else. Like, why would we give you special treatment?
Yeah.
Hell, we used to own you before.
Right.
Like,
we already did that. We already had this. We already had this discussion.
Yeah. So like, I think it's an unfortunate price, but I think the market caused. It's like, I'm sorry that gas costs $7, but you got to drive to work. Like it's kind of that thing.
Yep.
So
let's take a look at chat and see what chat's saying. What do you guys think about all this? It's crazy. This is like 2 weeks in a row. We just had a total like megaton announcement in the games industry. Pot F2. Didn't Sony Ben make Siphon Filter? It did, but it was a third-person shooter.
Yeah, it was a different.
Yeah, I mean, technically.
Also, Siphon Filter's terrible.
It is. Also, technically, Days Gone is a shooter.
Yeah, it is.
It's a third-person shooter.
Look, you're not wrong that if Sony Ben made a game as a service shooter and it was good, it would be the first good shooter Sony Ben's ever made. Like you're not wrong there, but having some Destiny people there to advise from the beginning would make a difference.
Yeah. 1X Solo, what Sony published and owned multiplayer game are people playing today? None.
Yeah, there aren't really any. I mean, there will be when Gran Turismo comes out, but that's not really the same thing.
Yeah. Think of it as music. This is from Schneeky. Think of it as music. You can't take a singer, the whole band make the music. Okay. Nolan Elbrick, $3.8 billion for a couple programmers. I mean, that's kind of what your point was, right?
No, unless by couple you mean like dozens, and like a synergy of team that can't be matched, and a cleanliness to presentation and as I understand it, back end stuff that is unmatched in the game as a service realm, according to some of the devs I know. Like Bungie runs that ship real tight, and they know how it works, and they figured it out on the fly. Like they are. There is probably if I had to build a game as a service, I probably would want no one else above them advising me on what to do from day one, except maybe the guys who rebuilt Final Fantasy XIV from the ground up.
I think Blizzard's pretty good at it.
Blizzard is good at it from their version of it.
I mean, they do Overwatch, they do Diablo, they do World of Warcraft.
Well, Diablo,
the industry's longest game as a service, World of Warcraft.
Yeah, but World of Warcraft also is a subscription model on a level that just doesn't really work the same way.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to compare that to what Bungie does.
Well, they get a lot off the top no matter what.
They do. But,
Next level, I like that name too. Matt is right in that Bungie has the best insights into making successful multiplayer games, but Shane is right that it's not worth it to buy the studio just for information.
Yeah, well, I don't think they're just buying it for information, but I think that is one of the ways that the people who made that decision at Sony are going to justify themselves when they go to sleep at night. You get a lot from Bungie, obviously. Like, you get a lot of input, you get a lot of inside information, you get a lot of you're gonna get some kind of advantage on.
Vincent's saying it's not 3.8, it's 3.6 billion.
Oh, well, wow,
so we're
bargain.
No that problem. Technically is 200 million, so that's what they paid to buy Insomniac.
Yeah.
Matt, how much of
somewhere Ted Price is just like, what the hell? Like, I should have held out for a bill.
Dude, I was thinking that today when I was in the shower. I'm like, Ted Price must be so mad at this point. Because seriously, like, they sold way too low.
They did.
They could have got so much more money. What was it, 274 million?
Something like that.
Man, think about everything that Insomniac makes. And they were sold for like 1/30.
I hope he got some, I hope they got some kind of good
Bungie
cut on Spider-Man and all that, because they're moving PlayStations with those games.
I know, man. I feel bad for him. Like, I don't feel bad for him because Ted Price is worth $100 million or whatever. But the trickle down for the other founders of Insomniac, those are the people I feel bad for.
Ted Price is like, I could have had another yacht.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think Ted Price has a yacht.
I mean, don't feel sorry for people who are worth $100 million, but it was a bad deal.
But there's got to be, I don't know, in your most private breakfast coffee moment when you see that news on your phone, it's got to be like,
no, the tear runs out of the eye, drips off the nose into the coffee.
Yeah.
Plink.
I know nobody reads newspapers anymore, but I just pictured Ted Price putting the newspaper down like,
what did we do? What did we do? They literally sold just like a year too early.
No newspapers anymore, and also what newspaper would have that news in it?
Yeah. Like, would you rather have Bungie or Insomniac? And take your personal preference out of it, that you like Spider-Man and blah, blah, blah. But just from a business perspective, would you rather own Insomniac or Bungie?
I would rather own Insomniac because I think they're more versatile.
Mm-hmm. Me too. And their output's better. They have more IP.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing saying that Bungie can't have more IP. Like, they've just had to focus on Destiny because they're, as an independent company, you can't really spread yourself that thin. Bungie's gonna have the opportunity to. I mean, they kind of hint at it in that statement. They're gonna have the opportunity to do a lot more now with Sony's backing, and they're gonna have a lot opportunity to do a lot more without interference, because that was one of their big complaints about Activision. We've seen Sony is better, but even when you don't have this kind of deal in place, Sony's better about letting you do what you think you need to do and on your own. Than, for God's sake, they let Days Gone happen. So
yeah,
what are you gonna do? It's a great deal for Bungie. Like, everybody at Bungie's got to be thrilled.
Heck yeah. That's
even
way
if you're not
more.
getting paid out.
How much would you have paid for Bungie?
I mean, if you came to me and said, how much is Bungie going to sell for, I would think it would be more in like the 500 million range.
Mm-hmm. I would say like $1 billion max.
Yeah, if you're real. Although, again, I wouldn't go to $1 billion for them unless it was exclusive to me.
But you can't, because typically when you buy a company, it's 7 times annual revenue. Mm-hmm. So right now, word on the street is that Bungie makes $500 million a year on Destiny 2. So you multiply that by 7.
3.5.
Yep.
Yeah, that's about right then.
It's nuts. But you're also assuming that money's going to keep rolling in. And as Destiny 2 ages, I mean, I haven't played Destiny 2 in I don't know how long, Matt. How long's it been since you played it?
I can't remember.
2020, I think, was the last time I played Destiny 2.
I mean, I didn't play the Queen.
The Witch Queen?
The Witch Queen.
I think that just coming out like this month.
I didn't play the one before it.
I don't remember what it was.
Remember they did like a revamp or something, and again.
Yeah, but also the names of their stuff, it's very hard to remember.
Everything in Destiny is definite article, capitalized noun. Like, it's just like it's like the tower, the darkness, it's like, okay, I get it. Like,
what do you think Sony's going to do next? Do you think it's going to buy Square Enix?
I mean, that would be my expectation if they're going to do something else. I mean, I think the next things would probably be smaller things, like little dev,
more like Housemarque type stuff.
Yeah, like more like a Housemarque thing. More like how when Microsoft's first move was to buy up like Ninja Theory and Obsidian and things like that. I don't expect them to go for one of the big guys, but like, Yeah, if,
That
you know,
escalated quickly, by the way, for Microsoft.
Yeah, it did. It did right up. And all of a sudden, Bethesda
quick
and
old
Activision
ramp right up.
And they were like, Bethesda. Oh, Bethesda's about as big as you get there, I guess, right? It's like, you know,
Yeah.
somebody's thinking about Gary, Indiana, all of a sudden, and all of a sudden, it's like, oh no, we're gonna buy this. I mean, although it's weird because when you think about it, Activision isn't really that much of a monolith outside of like they make a really big important game, but that's the only thing they make. You know, it's like
a smashing success year in and year out.
right,
Yeah.
or that they even bother. You know, same with it's like EA. It's like EA barely shits out 2 games a year.
Yeah.
And this past year, they don't even work right.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Yeah. Madden was trash this year.
Yeah,
I thought it was.
And well, not that you know from the sales, Jesus.
Yeah.
And FIFA didn't get wonderful reviews, and Battlefield 2042 didn't even work right.
Right.
So
Still. Yeah.
you know, imagine if EA didn't have Respawn.
Yeah. Oh, they'd be in deep crap.
They just have those things.
I mean, Respawn now pretty much is EA.
yeah, and you have BioWare sort of making this nebulous Dragon Age sequel somewhere, maybe in the next 2-3 years. But like, what are they doing? What's just riding on the mobile
Chasing
games,
mobile.
I guess. Yeah.
Like a lot of publishers chasing mobile. It's easy money, man. And either you're doing it and you're successful, or you're not doing it and you're going to get fired.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how it works right now.
So yeah, I'd expect like, you know, stuff like Housemarque, maybe some other like, you know, indie stuff that they think they can, you know, spin into something like AA more, maybe the Kena devs.
Yeah.
But I think keep your eye on Square and Capcom.
Mm-hmm. Capcom. That would be a good purchase too.
I expect somebody to buy Capcom in the next 2 years. I'm not sure who, but Sony would make sense.
It would.
I bet they wouldn't be 3.6 billion.
You don't think Capcom would go for that much?
I don't think so.
I do.
Billions, but I don't know if they'd go as much as that.
Oh, man, that's some big IP there. Street Fighter, Resident Evil.
Yeah, but that's all, except for Resident Evil, it's all in the downswing.
Yeah, but all it takes is one game to change that.
Yeah, the reason I think Sony would buy Capcom is I think they would want Capcom's IP for use in their Sony video game movie grist mill.
That could
like that is
an angle for sure.
Like you know, like look, I know none of them have been bad, or none of them have been great, but like you could make a great Resident Evil movie. You could make a great Street Fighter movie.
There's no reason why there isn't a great Resident Evil movie.
There have been great ones.
Yeah.
You could make a great Dino Crisis movie. It's just Jurassic Park, except with like the serial number filed off. Like, who wouldn't want their own Jurassic Park movie, franchise like that? Apparently Capcom, because they won't make another freaking Dino Crisis game.
Yeah.
You can put the jetpacks in it if you have to. I don't care. There's tons of stuff you could do with that.
Yeah.
You could do a great CG Mega Man movie. Like there's fertile IP for what Sony wants to do moving forward, especially if Uncharted doesn't bomb.
How do you feel though if
Uncharted's going to bomb?
How do you feel though about the consolidation angle of all this? That we're already talking about Capcom or Square Enix being purchased, and just almost like assuming that it's just going to happen.
I mean, it's just sort of the nature of the beast. Like, partly it's the nature of capitalism, but also it's like, places like Square and Capcom, like they're starting to look kind of big and creaky and like held up by, floorboards propped up against the scaffolding kind of thing. And you've got these younger, more vital companies that I think are going to kind of grow up and fill the void and eventually become their own giant tilting scaffolding held creaky giants. That's just sort of how it works. And the options for companies when they get to that point, the way like you're starting to see Capcom get to, I think the way you already saw Activision get to in terms of at least creativity and ability to sustain, and you're definitely looking at some of the stuff in that realm over on EA, your options are to collapse or be acquired. And it's not an issue of like monopoly. People are like, oh, monopoly. There is no monopoly law. I know that the Activision thing's being reviewed by the FTC. It's a formality. Like you can't. A monopoly would require one of them to basically buy one of the other hardware manufacturers. Like they would have to,
or both of them.
Yeah, they would.
Yeah, that's a buy. They're no big three anymore. It's just
easiest to explain sort of with why Disney was able to buy Fox is like. They're gonna own, they now own a lot of IP, a lot of important ideas, a lot of important stories, but that doesn't matter. Like they don't own the ability to make films. Yeah. You don't have to go to Disney to make a movie.
Yeah, you don't have to go and buy film from Disney
or to like rent. They don't own all the cameras.
People don't really understand what a monopoly is.
Like that's not what that. You can't have a monopoly on good ideas.
Yeah,
because you can always just say come up with your own.
Yeah,
and that's it. And it can be have a very hard time paying to make that idea a reality. But that is not the same.
You'd have to funnel all production through Disney before it would be
right.
a monopoly.
Just like like Microsoft owning Activision is not a monopoly because everyone else can make a military shooter anytime they want.
They just can't.
Yeah,
they can't make one as good as Call of Duty.
Or in the case of Battlefield, apparently they just can't make one at all.
Right.
I would love to see a no-clip documentary about what the hell happened with that game. Like the making of 2042 would be I would pay theater ticket prices to see a documentary about that. I don't know what the hell happened there.
Have you ever seen a no-clip documentary that was salacious though?
No, but
they're always very
positive, and they're usually about success stories.
Yeah,
maybe Keeley's final hours are always pretty positive too. I need a
real documentary.
I need a real documentary. I need someone to do that with that. I need someone to do that with Cloud Imperium because the Star Citizen story. Yeah. I need like some kind of guerrilla documentarian to like get a job at Star Citizen and like film everything with a hidden camera.
There might be eventually a feature-length film made about that.
Yeah,
instead of just some little YouTube documentary.
That would be a great Aaron Sorkin film. Like I'd love to see like The Social Network, but for like Star Citizen.
Yeah. Biggest video game scam ever.
Citizen Roberts.
Okay, we got to move on. We just talked about that for almost an hour. Yeah, so it's been a big story.
It does go beyond just that story.
Oh, yeah. I could keep talking about it. I have like 5 other points I want to get to, but we'll be losing audience off of our stream, I think, if we go any longer on this. So we may touch back on this a little bit down the road.
I think inevitably more acquisitions will happen in some form, and it'll come up over the course of the whole. It's February 1st.
It's insane what's happened already.
It's been a hell of a year for the game industry,
and there's like awesome games coming out
at
the same time, which we're going to talk about one right now. Well, maybe I shouldn't call it awesome just yet. I am really torn on this game, Matt. Mm-hmm. Pokemon Legends Arceus. It is, I believe, and I hope, the way Pokemon games are going to be designed from here on out. Mm-hmm. I would really struggle to go back and play an old Pokemon game after playing this. What say you, Matt?
I would agree with that.
You would?
Even though there are times I feel like I should be playing this with a wave bird.
Yeah.
Pokemon should have been this 15 years ago. But better late than never, and I am enjoying. That said, I'm like 15 hours in, and I'm getting done. I can see the strings now, and like it's just one big grind.
Now, do you think that would have been the case if it was designed like the old games, or do you think it's because of because of the changes that have been made?
I think it's just the nature of Pokemon.
Yeah,
like you are at some point you have to kind of deal with the fact that the core of Pokemon is building that Pokedex.
Yeah,
and the way they adapted this into a more action RPG style is to make every single Pokemon a grind.
Yeah,
and it's not that hard. I've gotten level 10 research on a bunch of them by accident.
Yeah,
but like that's still what it is, and like the only reprieve is like the incredibly insipid story. So like. I don't know. I mean,
this game is gigantic. By the way,
I like
Matt.
it. Like I like it. I've enjoyed it. I love that I don't have to fight something to hit it with a Pokeball and see if I can catch it.
Yeah.
It does a lot of things I've been annoyed about the main series for not doing for a long time. It feels like a real place. I love seeing the Pokemon running around in the world.
Like they're wild.
They're wild. I think the setting where people don't really know everything about Pokemon yet is actually a smart move. Like
this is an origin story, basically.
Like I guess you're a modern kid in the Pokemon world. You get sucked back in time by Arceus.
Yeah, you fall through a portal.
You fall out of the sky
into the Hisui region,
Hisui,
which eventually will become the Sinnoh region.
Yeah, you're basically it's Diamond and Pearl.
Yeah, there's actually the town that is your home base in this is in Diamond and Pearl.
Yeah, and then there's like rival Diamond and Pearl clans. That are like in the vicinity that you help out. They're like cults now. It's like, and I love like they try to do kind of like origins and like more information on like what Pokemon were before people sort of like learned to get along with them and or enslaved them, however you want to phrase that. Because the Pokeball has just been invented, basically,
and they're like amazed that you know how to use one.
Yeah, like you caught 3 Pokemon in one day. No one's ever done that before. It's like okay, and I love that like they are made out of apricorns.
Right.
Like, I'm like, oh, they're not white. They're like red and like brown. They're brown because they're literally like a hollow apple.
Yeah,
like
yeah. And they finally explain in this game how the Pokemon get into the balls.
Which is a big controversy right now because no one realized it. Like, I guess there's a chunk of the fandom that assumed that the reason Pokemon shrink and go into the balls because the ball does something to make them shrink.
Right.
Pokemon can just shrink.
Yeah.
It's
all just an ability that they have. Yeah.
That's how they hide in tall grass.
Right.
And it's why they're called pocket monsters.
Yeah, exactly.
They can all shrink. That's the whole thing. Like, I didn't know that was controversial. Like, because when a lot of times, especially after like the first couple of gens when they animated them more in 3D, they shrink when they faint.
Right.
Like that's a thing.
Yeah, it's a clue.
And they pop up when they come out of the grass. Like that's been implied for like 20 years.
Time,
like,
fans can be crazy.
I mean, if you're a fan of something, so you get something in your head, it kind of
it's hard to get it out.
You should have seen. People don't remember this because a lot of the people that argue about these things on the internet are too young to have been around at the time. But like, people don't realize that like, Darth was not a Sith title until Episode 1.
Right.
And the idea that all Sith lords are named Darth something was new to Episode 1, and everyone's like, "What?" Like, and then beyond
before that, we only knew Darth Vader,
right? Because and the way Obi-Wan treats him, it sounds like Darth is his first name,
right?
Doesn't sound like a title,
yeah.
And then Episode 2, believe it or not, Episode 2 is the first time it was established that bad guys use red sabers and good guys use green and blue.
Yeah.
And in the comics before that, everyone used every color saber, yellow ones and orange ones, and Jedi Council guys had red ones. And as soon as that was established in 2, all of a sudden everybody went to like everyone's saber just changed overnight.
Right.
Like the next issue, everyone was just, and like people and like now the idea that like red isn't automatically the evil, especially because in the original trilogy, Vader was using a red saber the whole time. He's the only one who had a red saber. Maul had a red saber. You're like, okay, yeah, but like. It was never established before that.
Yeah.
And like it's this kind of thing where like if you love something and if you have it in your head this one way and then the series goes like, oh, actually it's like this, maybe you never noticed before, you're like, I guess, but now I got to rearrange a bunch of stuff and I don't like that.
Yeah,
So like the Pokemon fans are hitting that right now.
Matt, what is the plot in this game? What is the goal? Is the goal to go back through the rift and return home? They never established a goal.
Your goal is to fill the Pokedex up.
Yeah.
Like the idea that you want to maybe go home at some point is like completely
they never bring it up.
It's never like you have no wants or needs of your own beyond catching every Pokemon you see with a beanball to the back of the head.
But seriously, there's no goal in this game.
I mean, it's implied that Arceus has something for you to do because you have his magic phone and you're sort of like on a mission from God, I guess. But like. That's in the opening cutscene, and it has not come up again.
No, and I have played
15
this a lot.
some hours. Yeah, it's like I'm on the third area, and as far as I can tell, this might as well be Pokemon Snap for all the motivation I have to keep doing what I'm doing.
I only have 5 of the 10 stars, and I've played 30 some hours at this point.
I have 4.
Yeah,
so I'm like halfway to 5.
Dude, this game is gigantic.
The grind on the stars gets up there because also you get bonuses for doing different things and filling out the Pokedex stuff. So it really eventually becomes necessary to go out and do a bunch of stuff, and then come back and turn it in for the maximum bonus.
Instead of just doing it like, I caught one Pokemon, go back and turn it in. Yeah. It does pay to like bank.
Even when I finish like major story stuff, I'm like, I'm gonna stay out here and like do a bunch of more random shit before I go back and talk to the guy because like
you get bonuses.
Because you get bonus stuff for it.
And that's what matters because that's what builds your level so that you get your new star commendation, which then will unlock a brand new area of the map.
Well, and then lets you control higher level Pokemon,
right?
Because eventually your Pokemon's going to start out leveling you.
Yeah, that hasn't happened to me though.
No, not fully. Early on, it almost did, but then I got the second star because early on I didn't realize you had to turn it in. I didn't realize you didn't automatically.
Man, your first turn in must have been amazing.
No, I was only I got my second star because the first star is story driven,
right?
And then I was like, I got max on the thing. Where's my second star? And I think the professor said something like, "Oh, you should go talk to the hard ass."
You start
chick.
at the base camp. They'll tell you,
And so I did, but I was already like when I got the second star, I was already halfway to 3. So because I'd been grinding for a while on that.
Wow.
But like, and the other thing I have to like. And part of this is because the crafting system lets you make potions and healing stuff out in the field pretty easily. It's hard. at times.
It is hard.
The move, like tackle, can like take half the life off your guy.
My Pokemon die all the time from
constantly.
one hit. From one hit. Yeah.
The first boss, like I was leveled properly for the air. I thought I was like it one-shotted my starter.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if I can do. I pulled it off, but I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. Like I'm used to starters being basically like gods.
Well, the other thing about this is that my starter is no more powerful than the rest of my party.
No,
usually my starter is 10 levels higher than everyone else in my party.
No.
It's the same level as everyone else.
Yeah, and then like if you want the real shit, you gotta capture the alphas.
Right, and they're hard, man.
They're hard.
I haven't captured one yet. Have you?
Yeah, I've got 2.
How did you catch one?
I brought its life down to red and threw a bunch of Pokeballs so they got caught.
Dude, I've had the alphas at 1 pixel before and thrown 4 balls at them, and they just keep breaking out. I've used the great balls. I've used everything.
You just got to get lucky.
I guess.
I have an alpha Bidoof, or not a Bidoof, the leveled up Bidoof, the evolve, whatever the second evolution of Bidoof is. And I have an alpha Rapidash.
Okay, I have none. I've killed. I've ended up.
Oh, and I have an alpha.
I end up killing them.
The crab Paris.
No. Yeah.
Not Paris, like the evolved version of Paris.
I think actually there's an alpha fight in this B-roll here coming up in a second where I fight a Machamp or a
I
Machamp.
used to one of them the Rapidash. I came real close to lose because like basically, when you throw the Pokeball and they get out, they get a turn, right?
Yeah.
And he was just one-shotting all my Pokemon. And I was like, okay, you're dead. Bring the next one out. Throw another Pokeball and hope that I hope that I capture him before I run out of Pokemon. Basically.
Here you're seeing something in the B-roll that also is a huge departure from Pokemon. While you're fighting one Pokemon, the other Pokemon that are walking around can just join in.
Yeah, they can join. Like the battles can really.
All of a sudden, it's 2-on-1 instead of 1-on-1. And so part of it is like getting away from other Pokemon, making sure you're isolated because the fights
is an alpha.
Yeah, and so this is an example of it. I get him down to 1 pixel and can't catch him, and eventually he just dies because he had a burn, and the burn him ended up killing him. Like this happened to me all the time with the alphas.
We picked the same starter.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, I picked Cyndaquil.
Yeah, I like fire-type Pokemon for whatever reason.
I usually go with water, but I just think Cyndaquil is one of the cutest Pokemon in the history of the franchise.
So weird design with the fire coming out of its head and its ass.
Yeah. And when I played, I think I picked the Otter when I played the actual remake. So I was like, I'll go with Cyndaquil.
The B-roll showing something else too that's new to the series. So once you have mastered moves for your Pokemon, you then have the ability to choose to either you do it with an agile attack or a stronger attack. And it does take more of your magic points. Like if a move normally takes 1, if you do like the agile or the power, it'll take 2 instead. But you basically, when you're selecting your move, you just tap right or left shoulder button, and it'll either go agile. If you tap left, it'll go power if you go right. And it increases the damage of your attacks a ton.
Basically lets you do the agile lets you do the attack twice.
Yep.
And the
with
strong,
lower damage.
Yeah, and the strong lets you just
supercharge
the damage for 1
hit.
hit.
And there's strategy involved
using
in that
using the power style saved me in the boss fights. You have to use those.
Oh, there's no way you could beat most of them if you can't. Although the boss fights, Matt, what I've discovered is you notice how they tell you. See, you can see he has like 1 pixel left. I'll throw a ball, it won't catch him. It sucks. I could never catch one. I don't know why. I just never could.
Usually it took me like 4 or 5 tries on all of them.
Yeah,
you're at a disadvantage because he had a DOT.
And they'll one shot your whole party.
Oh yeah.
One shot, one after another.
Unless you get someone who happens to be resistant, and like there's no way to know that until they attack you.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially the bosses. Like I know what a Machoke can do, but I don't know. I don't know what like these noble Pokemon are. Like those are all new to me.
But what I've discovered about the boss fights, Matt, is they tell you like use these. What is the basket full of
bombs?
Bombs.
Yeah.
Throw the bombs at them and then attack them with your Pokemon. Don't do that. Just keep
throwing
the bombs.
Yeah.
And it's easy. I've beaten every boss first try. I just play it like a first-person shooter, and I just keep throwing bombs at them. Like they give you the dodge or whatever. Like compared to a normal first-person shooter, it's so easy to dodge the Pokemon's attacks. So I just never even attack them with Pokemon.
Your invincibility window for the dodge is like endless. It's just it's almost a whole dodge.
It really is. Yeah.
Like I was like early on, I was just like, oh, I'm going all Dark Souls with this, and then during the boss fight, I'm like, oh, as long as I've hit the button, I can literally dive through them.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even use my Pokemon at all in the boss battles. I just use my character, and that's another thing that's changed. Your character can now quote unquote die.
Right.
And you can leave behind a parcel that you have to go back and pick up, or
pick up other people's.
Other people can pick it up. And then there's like a network interface in the game where you can go and snag it from where people found it out in the wild and picked it up for you. And you can pick up for other people, and then they can pick it up through the network interface. I did get some free stuff through the network interface. Like I got a new outfit and something else, I think.
Well, some of that is from if you have saves from the other games.
Oh, really?
So I got an outfits for having saves for Sword and Shield, Let's Go, and the Diamond and Pearl remake.
I didn't get those.
You got to talk to the woman who sells attire.
Oh,
in the village.
I never have. I've never talked to her.
Yeah,
I mean, I've talked to her, but I've never bought anything.
Yeah, she'll give you talk to her after like the quest stuff with her is done. She will say, "Oh, I have a special delivery with your name on it, and you get packages for everything you have saves for."
And now you're seeing another new feature, mounts,
which they introduced just in time.
They do when you're starting to get sick of having to run across the maps. I have 1, 2, 3 so far. I have 2 that are land, and I have 1 that's sea.
Mm-hmm.
But I
assume there's air.
I'm guessing, but I haven't got that far.
Because there's definitely places I can't get to.
Yeah, but I haven't got that far yet. But you need, obviously, the sea one to get out to that volcano, and that's...
Yeah, because you can't swim. The only time I've died is finding out that I can't swim.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I guess I can't.
But, Matt, is there any going back now? I cannot imagine playing Pokemon in a different way.
Well, here's I guess the problem with going back or whether you go back or not is like, can you make a mainline game do this until maybe next gen? You know what I mean? Because this game runs like shit. Like,
I don't
it is
find
so
the
held
frame
back.
Rate that terrible.
It's not just the frame rate though; it's the pop in, it's the fade in. It's ugly.
It doesn't bother me as much
game.
as I thought it was going to, because I don't think the other Pokemon games look that good.
No, but I mean, art style, I think it's fine. But the technical issues bother me more because I'm not in a turn-based sort of RPG world. I'm running around through this environment. I'm constantly every time I turn the camera,
and the trees
every time I turn the camera, I'm reminded, like, oh right, this is running on hardware older than like almost as old as my fucking Vita. You know, like,
yeah.
It's just.
Oh, another change. You can choose when to evolve your Pokemon now.
Evolution's under your control.
They've changed so much, and Matt, I think all of it is for the better.
Yeah,
everything.
I can't think of a change.
Is there any change that you don't like?
No,
me either.
No, I mean, I wish the satchel held more. I've upgraded as far as it'll go.
It gets expensive to expand that thing, man.
But if you're gonna make me run around and like farm everything out there, you should just let me hold more stuff.
Yeah,
but, like,
agreed.
Okay. And I haven't maxed it out. It's upgraded as far as it'll go.
Because there's not really anything else to spend your money on. Yeah.
But it's fine. I don't know. You when you craft it at like camps, you access anything that's in your chest, your storage, so it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter.
The only thing your satchel is for is crafting on the fly and picking stuff up in the field.
Yeah.
So it's more or less fine. But I mean, I do really like what they're going for. It's just constantly there's constantly a reminder there for me that's like, this is running on incredibly underpowered hardware, and just like everything Nintendo makes, it's just that constant thing's like, God, I wish this was on a PS5.
Yeah.
Or something that like ran.
I mean, look, don't get me wrong.
I'm gonna think that when Breath of the Wild 2 comes out too. So fucking get ready. Like,
don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not technically incompetent. It is.
I'm not blaming the game for that. To be clear, it's not Pokemon Company's fault that Nintendo uses 3-gen old hardware.
But there are much better looking games on Switch as well.
Yeah.
Like, they have not maximized the hardware like at all. I don't think they could have the game could look a lot better on Switch.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of been the ongoing thing with all the Pokemon stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, why does it run this poorly when it looks like this? When you could, because Breath of the Wild is going to look way better than this, and it's probably going to run at least as well. Mm-hmm. Right?
Although Breath of the Wild 2, man, it ran like crap a lot of the time.
It did. It had problems, but it ran better than this most of the time.
Yeah.
Part of that was because the art style, sort of the watercolory art style, sort of covered the fade in a little bit. This is not really going for that. It's going for cartoony, but it's going for a more realistic look for the most part.
Yeah.
And art wise, it pulls it off.
Yeah.
Pokemon looks really good here. Like, the world looks nice. If you take away the technical snafus, like if you ran this on Dolphin or something, I think it would look great.
Let's talk about the two things that most people are complaining about. The graphics. Like, they don't bother me that much, honestly. I agree with you. It doesn't look that great, and it doesn't run that great, and there's draw-in, and there's pop-up, and The draw distance isn't very good, but it really doesn't bother me that much. I don't know why, maybe. I can't really explain it.
They do. I mean, they do the
I think
job.
The bar's so low with this franchise.
It doesn't bother me in terms of, like, it makes it bad or makes it bad to play. It bothers me in the sense that it doesn't have to be like this.
Yeah.
And it's not me criticizing Pokemon Arceus so much as me criticizing Nintendo for refusing to use decent hardware on their fucking hardware. Like, and I know the Switch 2 or whatever it is just going to be the same shit again. We're going to be stuck with something that could barely run what a vanilla launch PlayStation 4 could run.
Yeah.
And we're going to be stuck with that for another 5 years.
Yeah, so the graphics don't bother me that much. The other big complaint that everyone seems to have is that you have to catch the same Pokemon over and over. And that's pretty accurate. As you said earlier, like basically what you need to do is you need to get the research level for each Pokemon to 10. As Matt said earlier, a lot of times it just happens.
Yeah.
On accident.
Because
like, you don't do anything.
Because also early on it feels like you have to capture them over and over again, but what you really need to do is just about anything. Like you get research points for it depends
just
on the Pokemon.
Seeing them do a specific
seeing them
attack.
doing specific moves, using specific moves against them, defeating them with their moves they're weak to.
Yeah.
What's the other? Just beating them.
Yeah.
Like just and then a lot of times there's little side quests or requests that involve them that also count towards that. Like I've gotten 10 research without even realizing it a lot of the time on some of these guys.
Me too.
And some of them, I've had to focus. A couple of them I have had to focus on and be like, okay, I want to get this to 10, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. But like for the most part, like early on, I was like, oh my god, this is going to take forever. It's going to be like an MMO, and it doesn't.
Yeah,
it really doesn't.
I think that complaint is way overblown.
No, I think it's much smart. Not look, as a completionist who likes to do everything before he moves on to other things. Like I get that impulse, but the way to do this game is absolutely just play it and complete. And it just happens. And then like if you need to go back and do cleanup when you're done with an area and be like, okay, I didn't get all the information for the bunny ears or whatever, go back and do it.
And usually the cleanup is like,
don't worry about it on the way.
Attack the Pokemon with an item.
Yeah.
It's just something that's very easy to do. You just never thought to do it or wouldn't normally do it.
And of course, the other thing that you don't maybe realize early on is like, you don't have to do everything on the list to get to 10.
Right. Yeah.
Like all you got to do is like 4 of them.
Yeah.
And not even all of them. Like you get to 10 by like, you've got like how many, like
They're
6
weighted.
or 7,
Yeah.
like, because the arrows indicate which ones are worth more. So you just focus on those and
it's
you're good.
easy. Yeah. So to me, the two biggest complaints with this game, I don't see it, but I'm with you, Matt. Like I'm burning out on it already.
Yeah.
Like I'm probably 30 hours in, and I feel like I'm halfway done. The game is just gigantic.
Yeah. Which is not. I mean, look.
Kids,
that's the
great.
usual. Yeah, that's the usual Pokemon complaint for adults. I think.
Yeah.
It's like it's still going.
Yeah.
It's still
and
going.
It keeps going. And look, there's no gyms in this, but instead of there being a gym, there's regions, and like the regions are themed. So like one of the first ones is a poison region. And you end up fighting all the poison Pokemon. Yeah. So they have found ways.
Yeah, it's the same thing where it's like you realize what you have to like kind of build your team. You got to modify your team to handle whatever element is going to be the main element for this area or this gym. I think the way they've done it here is a little more interesting. Shakes it up a little bit because like you're fighting like not legendary, but like noble Pokemon.
Yeah, aren't those? Wait, those are the mounts, right? You beat those and then you get your mounts.
Usually, yeah, except for the first one.
Yeah,
where like the first one you get the mount and then you fight the noble, and the noble like, wanders off into the forest.
Yep.
But
I'm enjoying it. But I have been like marathoning the game, and I think that's probably having an impact on.
Yeah, I will say this: I've gotten tired of it while playing it several times over the weekend, but I always found myself loading it back up like a couple hours later just to catch a few things.
Yeah,
like it has the same kind of pull that Pokemon Go did.
Yeah,
it's like I'll just go in and do a couple. Like, it does feel. Unlike a lot of the other Pokemon games, it does feel like I can jump in, play this for like 30 minutes, and feel like I did something.
Yeah, you may not even realize it because sometimes you get credit for stuff you don't even know you did.
Yeah.
Because off, like in the distance, you'll see a Pokemon do something, and that will register towards like the research of that Pokemon. You don't even know it. This game is great as a handheld game. Like while the NFL games were going on this weekend, I played it on my Switch OLED. I actually played my OLED in handheld mode.
You got it just to turn on.
And it looks, I did finally. And I've been having problems with that. It goes to sleep and won't wake up. I have to do the hold the power button.
You have the worst Switch hardware luck.
I know. I have to do the hold the power button for 20 seconds, release it, and tap it again, and it'll reboot it. I don't know what's going on. Wow. But anyway, I did finally play my Switch OLED as a handheld this weekend. In this game, it's perfect. It's fine. It's great. It looks way better on the handheld screen than it does on the TV because it's all shrunk down and it's not stretched out and blurry.
Yeah. That's not what the map looks like.
Oh, it's an enhanced version of the map. Anything else you want to talk about regarding this? Is there anything that we've left out?
I don't think so. Like, I mean,
no trainer battles, really.
Not really. I mean, there's like story-driven ones.
Yeah.
You don't lock eyes with a child and
because nobody has away from them
because nobody has Pokemon yet.
Right.
Like it's that's one of the I don't know, it's not a hook to reason to play the game, but I do think it's interesting, especially early on, where like everybody's afraid of them. And like one of the early side quests is to have like to bring a Pokemon to a woman who thinks she might be finally have worked up the courage to touch one,
right?
But she won't,
and then she still doesn't.
Yeah, she won't do it. But that's fun. Like it's fun to see kind of this thing where it's like they're trying to kind of turn it into like, oh, what would it have been like before people knew anything about Pokemon?
Yeah. What about the lack of voice acting?
I mean,
and really the lack of real cinematics.
I didn't really think about it. Like I just don't expect it from this.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't expect it either. But I will say this: like while I was playing it, I kept comparing it to other open world games, a lot like Breath of the Wild, and I was like, this falls short. Mm-hmm. Like if Assassin's Creed was made this way, people would lose their frickin' minds.
True. And I mean, we're about to run into Horizon, which is going to
exactly.
I mean, there's a lot of archaic stuff in this. There's that constant like old school JRPG, BioWare RPG thing where like people hand each other items,
but
by,
don't
like,
touch.
moving their hand under the bottom of the camera, and so like you don't see anything. Like, it's it's like so many like I mean, look, that's true of a lot of Nintendo stuff in general. It feels archaic, but the Pokemon stuff feels extra archaic and always has. Like I said, like I don't blame the game necessarily. I'm not going to judge the game for it because it's not its fault. But like, this is what Pokemon should have been 10 years ago.
Yeah. Or longer.
Like
longer ago.
Like you should have made the jump from handheld to when you made the jump from handheld to GameCube. This should have been your first thing because it's not open world. You're picking large open areas, but you could have done open big areas half the size of these on like
a long time ago
on the GameCube or the Wii. Yeah. And like that could have been Pokemon.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it, but like you, I am waning on it at this point. Mm-hmm. But I have found myself, like you said, I got 40 minutes or I got 30 minutes. I'm waiting for something to render or waiting for something to upload to YouTube or whatever. I'll pick it up and I'll play it for a little bit and actually accomplish something. So.
Yeah, and I do like, there's the day-night cycles. You get in things, different Pokemon are out at different times. Different things happen during the daytime or nighttime, evening, morning. Like it's all very rudimentary and it's not particularly unusual for an open world game, but it's fun to see Pokemon like that.
In this light, yeah. And I would imagine, I hope to God they keep making games this way.
No, this definitely, Pokemon Legends needs to continue being this. Like,
do you think this will eventually drop the Legends name and it'll just be called
I don't think
mainline Pokemon?
I think this is a new brand.
That's so dumb.
I don't think they're ever going to let. Well,
I don't want to play an old Pokemon anymore after playing this.
I think the answer to that is then don't.
Yeah, because and that'll send the message, maybe.
No, it won't, because there's millions and millions of people that always want to play the same thing.
Well, I'm actually curious. I wonder if.
But I think this can very, very, very easily exist alongside the main series as an alternative.
I'm curious. Is there anyone in chat who has played a good bit of Arceus and prefers the old style of Pokemon more? In fact, just get your comments in about this game in general into chat right now. We're going to look at some of that stuff. But I'm particularly curious if there is somebody who prefers the old way. And if so, let us know why. Because I can't think of a single way that the old Pokemon games are better. Yeah. Other than, the only thing I would say is, I mean,
if you have, I guess, accessibility issues and have trouble with real-time button pressing, maybe. But in terms of just, like, sort of standard game design choices. If you're an abled person, like I don't see why
you would like the old way better.
I don't.
I definitely don't. I can't think of a single element of the old games that I do like better. None. Mm-hmm. Not one. JM Rain, enjoying playing, but 20 to 30 minutes at a time, then break.
I can think of one. I like that in the mainline series. This is a very minor nitpick, but in the mainline series, when you're fighting somebody and they go to their next Pokemon because you defeated their Pokemon, the game gives you an option to switch Pokemon. Says they're about to send out whatever. Do you want to switch Pokemon? And I like that because if their next Pokemon is a different weakness, I can automatically switch to my other appropriate Pokemon and not lose a turn on it and get hit from it.
One thing I would
say, that's the only thing I can think of that I missed from the old games.
One thing I would say too is that the enemies are more unpredictable in this one, because sometimes, depending on the stats that are running underneath the hood, a Pokemon you're fighting could just get three attacks in a row. And I have yet to figure out like what it is that's causing that. So it catches me off guard sometimes. Yeah. But that's a nitpick.
Like, at the same time, it's real easy to deal with. You know, you just fast travel back to a camp and rest, or like throw a revive. You know what? You can craft almost anything you need in terms of recovery items.
All of
them. You know, and certainly and stuff is plentiful. Even for revives, I would say stuff is pretty plentiful. So I never felt like I was.
It's just a satchel size.
Yeah, it's
That's really the only limit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I never felt like I was like being treated unfairly, but it was sort of like. It did get old in the sense that, like, especially early on, where I'm like, okay, I got back and I rested, and I'm going to leave the camp. Oh, I ran into a Drifloon. Oh, now he one-shotted my Cyndaquil. Now I got to go back and do that.
Yep.
It's just, I got like 20 yards before I had to I no longer had an intact team of 6.
Yeah.
That was annoying at times. But.
All right, let's look at chat and see what everyone's saying. Erebus Jones, I don't like it. I think it's the most technically incompetent, high-profile game I've played in years. I mean, that's it? It's the graphics? That's, okay. I thought we established it.
I mean, it's not good.
It doesn't look good.
It depends on your... I'm not just saying look good. I don't think it feels very good to move around in the world sometimes, but, it doesn't ruin it. It depends on your tolerance for that kind of thing.
I honestly...
If you only play stuff at 60 FPS, you are not going to make it through this game.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean...
the performance is awful.
It is, but I play most games on my LG CX at 4K, 120 frames per second.
Yeah, but you're not a frame rate...
I'm playing it just fine.
But you're not a frame rate snob. There are people who think video
shooters.
There are people who think video games should not be played under 60 FPS under any circumstances. Period.
I could never say, and look, this is you can, different strokes for different folks. I would never say that I don't like a game just because of its graphics. I would never say that.
Doesn't happen often, but sometimes there are things that are not playable to me. Granted, you got to go there's Nintendo 64 games I cannot play anymore.
Yeah, but I mean those frame rates were 15 frames a second. This game isn't like that.
No,
we shouldn't give people the impression that it just bottoms out.
But it's one of the worst performing Nintendo games. First part, technically second part. I don't know. Whatever it's only on Nintendo. It's a Nintendo game. Nintendo games usually perform better than this.
Yeah.
And I know Pokemon Company is not the same thing as Nintendo, but it's just. It's just a notch below what I expect to be acceptable as a Nintendo published game.
Okay.
It's not going to stop me. I still enjoy it, but and it certainly hasn't really impacted gameplay. I've never missed a Pokeball throw because of a frame rate hitch or anything like that. But it's annoying. It's annoying, and it doesn't have to be like that. And it's not Pokemon Company's fault. It's Nintendo going for subpar hardware. And now we're 5 years in on this system, and it's just what's going to happen.
Vincent says,
"Whether the Wild 2 is going to be the same. I don't know.
It might be.
It's going to feel held back by this hardware."
Vincent says, "I don't think traditional Pokemon needs the bomb boss battles, but the rest should work." I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
That's probably the only new element that just doesn't really make much sense.
No, I mean I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to make you part of the action because you don't want everything to be happening outside of the character. Now that the character is freely movable.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure that's it.
Okay. Don Lionheart, I don't like the old way better, but I do miss the gym battles.
Yeah.
I don't.
I would like to have seen one. Maybe there is one in there. I don't know. But maybe you run into the first gym.
The first ever gym battle. It's possible.
Maybe it's called the James.
OTAPs, I haven't bought a Pokemon game in over 20 years. Probably smart. Took the plunge here, and overall I'm enjoying it. Great foundation to build off. Lots to improve. Yeah.
If you haven't played Pokemon in a very long time, this is probably going to be a revelation.
Oh my god! I mean, for me, it was a revelation. I've played all of them. Leonosaurus, I prefer Arceus over the old system. They need to stick with the system going forward and build on top of it. I agree 1,000,000%.
I think they will. I'm just not going to replace the main series. The main series will always be what the main series is. This will just be a companion thing. But I could definitely see myself hitting a point where I just don't buy the main series anymore and just wait for the Legends games.
Yeah.
Because this is a much more rewarding gameplay experience to me.
It's leaps and bounds better. Vincent says, I also don't like that everything is more powerful. We mentioned that, how you get one hit, like, kills all the time.
Yeah, there's almost a rant. I don't feel as in control as I do in the main series. Like I generally feel like I know how much this thing's going to do, how much damage this will do, but there's times when I'm like, I'm 6 levels higher than this thing, and it just tackled me for 3/4 of my life. I'm like, okay, and I'm not even weak to tackle, so what happened?
Yeah. See what else. As always, go at Sifted Games. It makes it a lot easier for us to pull stuff out of the chat. If you have something that you want us to read on air, that's always a good way to do it. JM Rain, thank you for Twitch Prime, brother, and for gifting all these subs to our awesome live audience. Erebus Jones follows up. I'm not a frame rate snob. This game is getting a pass because it is a Pokemon game. It's not a good game. It's just an evolved Pokemon game. It's not good enough. I disagree with that, but again, you're entitled to your opinion.
I do agree that if this was not Pokemon, I'd be getting 7s.
Yeah. I drafted that team 8th overall, and my team has got an 8.6 right now. I'll take it.
The Nintendo bump is real.
It is real. But that's why I drafted it, because I said my strategy this year was to get as much Nintendo as I could, and so far it's paying off.
Doesn't always work, Star Fox.
Contano, I'm curious because people are saying it's an evolution, but I can't help but wonder if we are praising a very average game because it's better than what it has been.
I mean, that kind of is what's happening, I think, but like, I mean, I do grade Pokemon on a curve because it has been stagnant since like 1999.
Well, I grade it against other turn-based RPGs, and on that scale, it's pretty good.
Pretty good. Well, also, there's not that many of those anymore.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Pokemon also has an advantage against a lot of other modern turn-based RPGs because Pokemon doesn't really layer on useless stuff, and a lot of the others do. This now is up against other open-world action RPGs, and it kind of pales in comparison if you're going to compare it to, like, the actual competition on the other systems. But if you're just judging it as a Pokemon game, it's real damn good. Like, again, it's a curve. Like, it's fine. And I wish it ran better, and I wish there was more to do, and I wish there was more variety in places. But also, it's Pokemon. Like,
I think Veneraba kind of nails it. He says, this was the first Pokemon game to keep my attention in a while, but it feels like proof of concept rather than a full game.
Yeah.
I think
Which
that's
might also be why
accurate.
I keep comparing it to Breath of the Wild, because that also felt like that.
Yep. Norix Nessie, thank you for Twitch Prime, brother.
I bet the next one of these is going to be amazing.
Exactly. I think so, too. The Big Smoke 82, I never played a Pokemon game. Is it basically a card battler? No.
No,
it's a turn-based RPG.
It's a JRPG.
And each little creature is just a character in your party.
Yeah.
But they only have like 4 attacks.
Yeah.
Total. That's all they can ever have at a time. And if you want another one, you have to remove one of the 4. So it's just a very simple turn-based RPG with tons of potential party members. That's really what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Nope. Lestevid gifted a tier 1 sub. Thank you. That's awesome. Okay. I think that's it. Anything else you want to say?
Veritas does make a good point. I bet the next one will be amazing has been Pokemon's motto for 2 decades.
Well, I hope the next one's on new hardware.
I'm sure it will be. There's no way they're going to make another one in time.
But like even on new hardware, do I see Nintendo recording the requisite amount of voiceover that it should for a game like this? No. I don't. Do I see Nintendo creating amazing real-time cinematics that happen constantly throughout the game? No.
Wholly unimpressive real-time cinematics, but not amazing.
Right. Like legit ones with camera angles and like voice acting and
there's
post effects and
presentationally there's not much here that wasn't already done on the PS2 when it comes to like the story.
Yep. That's accurate. Okay, so there you go. That's Pokemon Legends Arceus. Oh. Should people buy it, Matt?
I think if you're looking at this footage and you're hearing us and like you're basically you want an evolved Pokemon, but you have the expectations of Pokemon that a realistic person should, then yes.
I say buy it.
I do not regret buying it.
I don't either. I'm having fun with it, and I am grinding through it, which will impact how you enjoy something. But I have learned over time to recognize that.
But
and
also
adjust
the
accordingly.
irritation with the grind wears off in a matter of hours for me still. Like I come back to it multiple times a day.
Me too. Yeah.
Don't like dive into it, and expect to come back to it periodically because it's a quick fix. It's not a marathon, which is actually going to be especially good considering all the stuff that's coming out in the next few weeks. Because I can definitely
I was just gonna say.
I can definitely see marathoning Dying Light and like Horizon and Elden Ring, but like taking like a couple after a few hours, being like, I'm gonna catch some Pokemon. And
I need a break.
Clear the mechanism a little bit.
I need a cleanser. Yeah, but to your point though, there's a lot of competition coming up here in the next. And I would just say this: I still recommend it as a purchase, even with all the games that Matt just mentioned coming out in the next 3 or 4 weeks. I would still recommend buying them.
I think
it's a huge game. You'll get a lot of value out of it.
Also, I think it pairs well. I would say if you're going to pick Dying Light or Horizon or Elden Ring, even if you're just going to get one of those, I feel like Pokemon's going to pair well with any of those.
That's a good point. You know? It's not like any of the other ones.
You know what I mean about a palate cleansing kind of game? You always have like a side game where you're just like, I'm going to play something that's nothing like that. I'm going to like, it makes me feel like I can definitely see myself like catching some Pokemon, watching some stupid cutscenes, and like being like, okay, now I'm ready for more Elden Ring.
Yeah. You know? I'm definitely going to need breaks from Elden Ring. I'll tell you that right now.
I'm going to play a game where the dodge roll loves me.
I just think we just went through the hype train. No, we're at level 2 for the second time around.
Mm.
Wow. But
I like it.
Emojis for everybody.
I will say that like the reviews are obscenely inflated in the numerical score, which is good for your team. But like,
I don't 9s and 10s. That's crazy.
No, just performance wise, no.
Like, the visuals would drop the game enough on their own to get me out of that.
Yeah, easily
that zone of scores.
Yeah, so don't be fooled by that. But it's like it's in the 7 to 8 range, I would say.
Yeah.
If I was being more realistic about it, and I think that's where people will come down on it in the end.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be surprised either if by the end of the year, when I actually get my score for this, it's more like an 8.2.
Yeah, once you've got like 100 reviews averaged.
Yeah. Still, I'll take an 8 in the 8 slot. That's cool. Barry Lomax, Shane, don't give up on Elden Ring. I believe in you. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I won't give up, man. I'll give it everything I've got, that's for sure. Justin Horman, thank you for the 505 bits. I don't know what the butts part of that means, but
butts. It's not bits, it's butts.
Oh, 505 butts. Okay. I'll take it. Thanks, man. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about one of Matt's favorite topics, Star Wars. Came out this week, and I'm very curious to hear what you think about this, Matt. That Quantic Dreams Star Wars Eclipse is being designed to mimic The Last of Us. Now, if this may sound familiar to those of you out there, and to Matt, I'm sure, this was the same thing that was said about Star Wars 1313, except it was being designed to be like an Uncharted game set in the Star Wars universe. We all know what happened to that game. Actually, did you see the crazy Boba Fett gameplay that came out this week from Star Wars 1313?
Yep.
That game was really far along, man.
It was.
Wow.
Very far along.
How disappointing is that?
I mean, that happened with a bunch of Star Wars stuff. I mean, look at Force Unleashed 2. That game was basically half finished when they forced it out the door.
Yeah.
That game was a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
You only got to the middle of Act 2 in that game. And then they just ended it. And it was like either they shut it down.
At least they released that one, though.
Yeah, but it was like one of those like, oh, we shut it down, or like you can just finish what you got and force it out the door and call it a day, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
It was a bad time. Early 2010s were bad time for Star Wars games.
Yeah. But Star Wars 1313, stuff just keeps continuing to leak out of that game. I'm sure we'll see even more as time goes on.
Because it was so far along.
I can't believe still that they canceled it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that mostly got canceled as a result of the sale transfer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That was I think that was all part of the Disney purchase, and everything got cleared. The board got cleared because it was old EU.
Yeah, and
it was going to be Boba Fett's origin story, which, as we now know, obviously is his origin story as a bounty hunter, which was I think a mandate from Lucas after it already started. It wasn't going to be about Boba Fett, and then he decided to make it young Boba Fett, and they had to scramble. He did that a few times. There was the story of the Darth Maul game, the Splinter Cell Darth Maul game.
Could have had nice synergy with the Boba Fett show that's airing right now, though.
Yeah, but it would have come out 7 years ago, so that would probably have contradicted the Boba
Has it been
show.
that long since 1313?
I saw 1313 at E3 2012.
Is that right?
Yeah, that was the last E3 I was at for G4. They showed us that.
Wow. Okay.
That was they shut that down the year that Disney bought them.
Okay. Well, what do you think about this,
Matt? It's been 10
Matt?
years.
Star Wars Eclipse. First of all, we should mention this. Star Wars Eclipse, as of right now, people are saying it's like 2027 or something. Yeah. Like, it's not coming for a long time. How do you feel about David Cage trying to create a game like The Last of Us? Rhetorical question.
I feel like it's expecting a mouse to build a skyscraper.
Yeah. I mean, look, if they're saying, maybe that's why they're saying 2027, because it'll take his team that long.
I'm hoping they take it away from them.
Really?
Like, I'm hoping they just take the project away and give it to somebody competent.
You think that'll happen?
It might. Stranger things have happened.
I mean, they couldn't... Didn't he pitch this idea, though? Like, they couldn't take it from him and give it to somebody else,
they could.
Right? They could just take it from him.
Of course they can.
Really?
Anything you pitch Star Wars-wise belongs to Lucasfilm.
Really?
They can take your idea and do whatever the hell they want with it.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that.
Everything you do for your Lucasfilm, as far as I know, unless something drastically changed, is all work for hire. Like, if Gary Whitta pitched Rogue One to them, if Gary Whitta went in there and, like, pitched Rogue One as the and they're like, no, we don't like that, but we're not going to do it. And then they made, Rogue Uno, like 2 years later, that was the exact same. There's nothing you can do about it. As soon as you walk in that door, you're giving them the idea.
Provided you're being paid by them and you've signed.
Yes. Well, you sign anything
appropriate
to walk
paperwork.
In that. Usually, you sign just about anything walk in that door, NDAs, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea their asses are covered 4 ways from Sunday on that kind of stuff. If they want to take Eclipse away and have somebody else make it, if they want to pay whatever penalties there might be for breaking that contract with Quantic Dream, they can do that, and they might.
How do you feel about studios that emulate another studio's design? Do that generally end up going well?
That's how we got Dark Forces.
Yeah.
That's how we got X-Wing. That's how we got Shadows of the Empire. That's how we got almost every Star Wars game.
Shadows of the Empire was not good.
But it was the proof of concept for Rogue Squadron.
Mm-hmm. Because the only good parts
that
of it
Hoth
were
battle
the ship flying.
Yeah.
Really, just the Hoth battle.
The Hoth battle and the
they were very smart to put that at the beginning of the game.
The space battle at the end.
Yeah, it's pretty good. All the on foot third person stuff that was trash.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Although we did get to see what the bottom of a Dianoga looked like.
That's true.
That was fun. that was I still think that level's creepy. Like swimming around there and seeing them all.
Yeah.
That something about the way the N64 did fog.
Yeah.
That was true. Clanker's Cavern freaks me out too. Like something about the depth of fog in the underwater in N64 games is just like creepy to me.
Huh. Now look, I'm not trying to say that, iteration is the key to almost all art. Nobody comes up with a truly unique concept. Most art is some iteration on something that came before it. But it just seems like in gaming in particular, anytime a studio decides, like, we're going to make this game, which is Star Wars but Fortnite, Star Wars but Minecraft, it seems like that stuff never ends up working out.
I mean,
it ends up becoming too derivative, and like the IP isn't enough to kind of get it over the hump usually.
I mean, your game of the year a couple years ago was Star Wars but Dark Souls.
If it was Star Wars but Dark Souls, I wouldn't have liked it.
I mean, that's what Fallen Order is.
Well, it's way easier than Dark Souls.
But it's still using the Dark Souls template. That's how they modified it. That's execution. Execution matters. Like they made it accessible. And it's a lot of Metroid to it as well. But also you could say Dark Souls has that too. Dark Souls just doesn't have the upgrades that let you get further. So it's like there was a melding of Metroid and Dark Souls. There's nothing in Fallen Order that was original. Like,
I mean, there's nothing in most video games that's original anymore.
But like Star Wars traditionally takes what's popular at the time and and hoses it down in Star Wars juice, as Greg Bemis would say on Extended Play. That's how we got Dark Forces. It's just Doom, but Star Wars. X-Wing is just Wing Commander, but Star Wars. And some of them are not successful. The Masters of Terras Kasi is Tekken, but Star Wars, and terrible.
Yeah.
But it did give us Hor, the Tusken Raider named Hor.
Yeah.
So there is a PlayStation 1 game where you can load up the fighting game, the fight, and the announcer actually says, Luke Skywalker versus Hor. That's canon.
That's great.
That's canon. EU canon, but canon.
When they say that, like, it's going to be Star Wars The Last of Us, you don't think it's like the tone, right? It's just
I think it's going to be where the camera's placed.
It's just the design. Yeah.
And it's not going. Look, if everyone could do Last of Us, everyone would do Last of Us. Naughty Dog is a particular case with people that can do that.
Well, most studios don't have the
maybe
time.
If Insomniac told me or they were going to do that, maybe I'd be like, okay, they might be able to pull that off. Quantic Dream, get out.
I think it's more about time, though. Let's be honest. Naughty Dog takes like 7 years to make a game. I mean, so does Rockstar. It's like, I don't know that they're that much better than everybody else.
Yeah,
they probably are a little bit better, but they're afforded so much time.
Sure,
it's
but
like,
they also
I feel like
know
any
how to.
studio.
They also know how to make it feel good. Like to one of the things you point out about devs all the time, Quantic Dream's never made an action game.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. They've never been good at making the games they already make. There's nothing indicating to me they can make something that feels good to point and shoot.
Well, the other thing too is that when they first announced it, the game was called like an interactive adventure game. And
it sounded like what it was going to. But they were always.
And now all
making.
Of a sudden, it's a Last of Us clone. I don't know. But to your point, you're right. Like a game,
this game might as well be called Star Wars Red Flags. Yeah. Like it's just I have no hope for this whatsoever.
Do you think it's ever going to come out?
I think there's a non-zero chance it never comes out.
Yeah.
It's too far out. I mean, if they really are having so much trouble staffing up that they think it'd be 5 to 6 years, like what's the point?
Yeah.
Will the High Republic setting even be in play anymore at that point?
Who knows?
Like it could be a throwback by then.
It could be.
The High Republic has had a lot of trouble catching on with people outside of the comics and the novels because they don't do anything with it.
Yeah.
So yes, the High Republic could definitely use a boost in terms of raising its visibility with people who like Star Wars, because if you don't read the novels, and I can hardly blame you for not reading the novels, you probably don't really know about the High Republic. But putting a game out 7 years from now is not really the way you do that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the point of this is. If it's that far out and you're working with just such a dog shit company that has such a terrible track record of its writing. But like I've said before, part of the problem with the writing in David Cage games is he's trying to tackle big, important social issues that he has no clue how to handle. Mm-hmm. And it just comes off as a weird ham-handed after-school special. And maybe pulp space opera is exactly his level. Maybe Star Wars is his level of competency, and he would have a good Star Wars story in there somewhere. Maybe if he stops trying to quote Martin Luther King and starts quoting Obi-Wan Kenobi, he might have something. I know he wouldn't quote Obi-Wan Kenobi because Obi-Wan Kenobi lived 300 years after the High Republic. Leave me alone.
That's funny.
The CG trailer looked cool. I mean, that's the High Republic setting is cool to me. I would be interested in a game set in that. I would play a KOTOR that was a spin-off that was set in the High Republic. But I have negative faith in Quantic Dream for any number of reasons, and would be glad to see this go away or move to another company. Almost anyone.
Yeah. I would be surprised if it ever comes out, because the other thing, too, is that
I'd rather play Don't Nod's version that is literally an adventure point-and-click game.
Well, the other thing, too, is that this isn't the only project that it's working on, Quantic Dream. It's also working on turning that Dark Sorcerer demo from the PS4 into Dreamland, a real game.
So have they? I guess they haven't. I'm still curious if they're just taking the fantasy setting of that and doing that, or if it's going to incorporate the fact that it's clearly a set,
breaking the fourth wall.
Is it going to be is it going to be a Forspoken thing where that guy playing the wizard gets sucked into a world where everybody thinks he's really a wizard?
That would be probably better than the concept that they have for
it.
That's
true. That's true.
That would be my guess.
But if you're going to call it Dreamlands, that implies another world, or you might end up that sound some
it's possible.
Cynical actor has to suddenly play the role for real. Sounds like the kind of concept that Cage would go for.
That could make it interesting, actually.
Could make it interesting in the hands of a competent writer.
But they take so long to make their games already, and if they're working on 2 at a time and they can't get staff enough to work on even one of them, I don't know. I feel like we're almost talking about something that doesn't even matter anymore, because none of this stuff is going to ever come out.
No, I mean, this thing, Dream, that's a PS6 game.
Yeah.
Eclipse
a PS4 demo
game.
for PS6.
Eclipse might be a PS6 game at this point.
Yeah. If you're talking 7 years out, it would be right on the edge. Cross platform.
Why did you even make that trailer?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I don't either. It's so early.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they're probably just excited that they got the green light.
But especially in this world where it's but that wasn't even them really. It was a CG, It was a CG rendered thing. Mm-hmm. It's that's not even Quantic Dream's thing. Quantic Dream does real time stuff. It's why do you? That had to be Lucasfilm paying for that. So why did you make that?
I don't know.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
Especially when you're sitting in this situation where we've had 4 Star Wars games in 10 years. EA dropped this ball so hard, and coming out here and being well, you get this one in 7 years. That's almost 17 years after the acquisition of Lucasfilm. Who cares?
It's
at that
crazy.
Point?
I know. Well,
tell me what you're going to do with Squadrons. Tell me what you're going to do with anything else.
The good news,
give me an update on the KOTOR remake thing.
The good news is that Ubisoft is making a Star Wars game.
True.
That's the good news.
Yeah.
That is the one game that I feel like I can count on. Respawn's games. I feel like I can count on those to be competent.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing that makes the Quantic Dream Star Wars game kind of more prominently irritating is there's nothing to play right now if you're a Star Wars fan. We're waiting for Lego Star Wars, and the next thing we're going to get is probably going to be Fallen Order 2 next year.
Probably
if we're
early
lucky.
Next year.
And if 7 years from now Star Wars games are coming out of the pipeline on a regular basis and really filling that need, I don't really care if a Quantic Dream Star Wars game comes out because I can just easily ignore it.
Play all the other ones, yeah.
But if it's the only thing we're gonna get one Star Wars game every 2 years, that's a significant chunk of my lifespan that's left at this point.
I know. It's funny. I'm at that point too. I'm at the point now where I'm wondering if I'll ever see the Steelers win another Super Bowl. It's funny the things you think about when you get older. It could not happen.
That stuff can happen. What was the thing? There was a meme that was going around at the beginning of the playoffs. It's no one has ever sent a text about the Bengals winning a playoff game because the last time they won a playoff game, texting didn't exist yet.
Exactly. Well, the Steelers, when they won,
that's 30 years.
I know, man. When the Steelers won the first Super Bowl after the drought against the Seahawks, it had been 25 years from when they had won another one. So there is a chance I'll never see another one. Just wait till you get to our age, people. It's really fun. But anyway, I really think that both of these projects from Quantic Dream will probably never come to fruition. Yeah, honestly, and maybe we'll never talk about them again on GameFace either.
Oh, no one's that lucky.
All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Hollywood, and Matt caught wind of this topic when he got in here, and he had some strong opinions about it. And basically what we're talking about is the fact that there are so many TV shows and films in development right now based on video games. And so what rankled Matt's ire was that on our rundown, the title for the topic is Hollywood is Creatively Bankrupt. And he disagrees with that. So explain why.
I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with it fully, but it's just a complaint that's been leveled against Hollywood since before we were alive. Yeah. And so to the point that it just doesn't feel like a valid criticism anymore.
You brought up something I didn't know about.
Yeah,
actually.
In the 70s, what we would now consider one of the golden ages of where we're getting The Godfather and The French Connection and all the great 70s auteur filmmaking stuff that did in the end lead to Star Wars when you think about it.
Yeah.
Star Wars doesn't exist without Coppola being successful. There were numerous editorials, and I know this because my dad used to have fanzines and magazines and all. I have all these old things from that. You read them, and they're mind shredding because it's a lot of them are written by the people who say stupid, toxic bullshit about Star Wars or other movies on Twitter now. Except Twitter didn't exist, so they just wrote it in magazines. It was a lot easier to avoid, but there was tons of people. There was multiple editorials talking about how Hollywood is creatively bankrupt now because all the movies are based on books. When was the last time you saw a movie that wasn't based on a book? Everything's a novel.
Or wasn't based on anything.
We know how they all end because we've all read The Godfather. I'm how many people now even know The Godfather started as a book?
Yeah.
Right?
It's hard for me to think
2001.
Yeah.
It wasn't based on a book, but they wrote a book alongside of it, and that got dinged for that because it had a book related to it. Clockwork Orange. It's all that stuff was criticized for that, and it's crazy to think now that people criticize it for being based on a video game or a comic book or whatever, but if you base something on a book, nobody bats an eye because books are smart now.
Yeah.
Right? But and it's just what the popular entertainment or the entertainment that someone doesn't always choose as part of the mainstream. Go back to the Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone episode where Burgess Meredith likes to read all the time and everybody makes fun of him, and then there's a nuclear war and he's in a bank vault and he comes out and everybody's dead but him, and it's called Time Enough at Last, and he's oh, finally I can read all these books, and then he drops his glasses and he can't see anymore. A, great episode. B, the first third of that episode is just people being horrendously shitty to this man because he likes to read things. He gets home and his wife has cut all the words out of his magazine so he can't read it when he gets home from work, and I'm who's mad that someone's reading? It's
that is indeed the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, but it's this was apparently not a super weird thing for bookworms to run into if you like to read a lot, because same way if you like to play video games, people would be why are you always looking at a screen? And it's that kind of thing. Why can't you just let me enjoy what I enjoy? Yeah, that's always been a thing. It's just it's always been a thing that people think that Hollywood's creatively bankrupt because they are not making movies the way that they think movies should be made. They do not make movies the way that they liked them when they were younger. It's always
things are way worse now, Matt, because I really
they
struggle.
Really aren't. But,
really? Okay,
yeah,
well, let me
they really
state my
aren't.
case. Because I really struggle to find, not just films, but TV shows as well, that either aren't...
TV shows, I'll give you.
It's something that isn't based on some other existing property, or a film that is digging up some old film franchise from 15, 20 years. Like, they just made a new Scream,
Well,
which I actually almost went to see.
My
It's
answer,
right on the fringe.
My answer to that is you need to look at stuff that isn't just blockbuster tentpoles. Like
the indie stuff.
Anything. 150 movies come out in America a year, and maybe 10 of them are comic book movies, and maybe 3 of them are based on...
I was even really referring to comic books. I was
right,
talking
but
about other
comic
stuff.
books are the main source right now.
You're
but
right.
What I'm saying is, like, you go to you go to the Lamley theaters or whatever, you're going to see a bunch of, like, what people are talking about, The Lighthouse, or like all the most horror movies are not really. I mean, there's a lot of reboot stuff, but a lot of the vital horror movie stuff is not based on anything. Everything that Jordan Peele does.
They're so rare, though.
They're not rare. They're everywhere.
Like a good horror movie that isn't
good horror. Okay, good is one thing. But what I'm saying is, like, original stuff comes out all the time. You just got to go look for it. You just can't go see it at the local Cinemaplex, and that is a problem.
The problem is it's usually crap.
It's not, though.
I mean, when I start digging around indie films, like, it seems like 1 out of 5 hold my interest past the first 30 minutes.
I mean, there's a bunch of other. I mean, The Green Knight, like stuff like that. That's obviously based on something. It was based on an ancient myth. Like that. I'm not going to count that as an. As
I don't either.
And there's mistakes you can make with that. Like, people need to stop trying to make movies out of King Arthur and Robin Hood. Like, I know it's just royalty. I know they're public domain, but nobody cares.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, there's always been, the front line of Hollywood has always been unoriginal stuff that everybody knows is going to sell. That's it's a business. It's always been a business. Between 1930 and 1942, they made 28 Blondie movies, which were based on the comic strip Blondie, Mommy and Dagwood. Like, this has always been there. And you go back to, it's like Tarzan. That's based on a book. No one remembers that Tarzan was a book. A terrible book, but it was based on a book.
I saw a cartoon the other day.
They even did a gritty reboot of it when we were kids. Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan.
I remember that. Yeah, I do remember.
And everyone went to see a Tarzan movie, and it was mostly him learning how to eat soup.
I saw a cartoon the other day, and it just had, like, 2 people sitting at tables. And one, it was comic book movies, and there was a line of 1 million people. And then the other one was comic books, and there was nobody.
That is true. But that's been true for years.
Why is that, Matt, that people love movies about comics but don't care about comics at all?
Because A, people don't like to read. B, people don't want, like, stuff taking up space in their house. And C, like... Okay.
It is kind of bizarre, though, isn't it?
Give Ashes in the Hourglass clearance on that one, so we can respond to it, because he's saying the same thing people have said since we were kids about the same things. He says he disagrees with me because the types of film that are successful now are just big dumb shit. No,
not all.
They've always been the same thing. Like, if you go back to the 80s and look up film criticism, they're going to talk about how everything Spielberg makes is crowd-pleasing garbage and mind candy that has no redeeming value. And you're going to ask someone who grew up then, they're going to say E.T. and Indiana Jones are the greatest things that they grew up with.
Yeah,
because it does. I will say it over and over and over and over. The golden age of anything is 12, because that's how old you were when you think the best stuff came out.
Yeah,
always, and it goes around and around and around. I have an old book about sci-fi movies that came out in the mid 80s, and that my dad had, huge thing, and I got it when my dad died. And one of the most striking things to it for me, always in that book, is that it and a couple other books he had, they hate Alien.
The film.
The original 79 Alien. They call it a big haunted house of a movie. A big dumb boo. Ridley Scott's big dumb boo of a movie is what they call it. It's just every entry in these books written by, like, film aficionados / snobs at the time just go on and on about how Alien was just a big dumb crowd-pleasing stupid movie that nobody's going to remember in 10 years.
That didn't work out.
You just see the reviews of Blade Runner at the time. Like, this has always been there. You think the current stuff is stupid because it's not the stuff you loved.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you're wrong not to love it. If you don't like it, don't like it. That's fine. But, like, this stuff doesn't change. It just goes back to ancient Greece. Like, it goes back to when people were in ancient Greece, where philosopher people were worried that if they started writing things down, everyone would just read all the time and not work anymore. Which I guess is where that Twilight Zone episode comes from.
Nolan Elric says comic book writing has just become adapted failed screenplays. Would you agree with that?
Some of that, I mean, that it's more complicated than that. But somewhere around the early 2000s, I would attribute it largely to Grant Morrison's New X-Men and the Ultimate Universe reboot. Comic writers started scripting things more like TV or film scripts. They started scripting them more as storyboards, almost, which is what they are.
Yeah.
You know, they moved away from that thing where if you read older comics from the 90s or earlier, it's just a bunch of word balloons where people are just saying what's happening in the picture,
right. Yeah.
in the text.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
Stan Lee used to do that all the time.
Yeah, most
and
comics
it's unreadable.
do.
It's terrible. Whereas, like, you know, you had people like Neil Gaiman, a lot of the Vertigo writers would pioneer the idea of, like, I'm writing like a script, I'm going to describe what's in the panel, and the artist can just take it and run with it. And that became sort of a more normal way to do things, whereas the old Marvel way was you'd plot it, you'd say, like, this is what happens in the story, page by page, and the artist would draw it, and then the writer would fit the words in where they could, basically. It was not really the same sort of collaboration that happens now. So yeah, it does. There is a lot of crossover between how that works. But I think it's a better way to write comics. I think comics are better than they've ever been, and I've been reading comics since 1979.
Yeah.
And I go back to the stuff I loved as a kid, the old X-Men, even the old Claremont X-Men stuff, and it's just unreadable now.
Really? Interesting.
It's not all of it. Some of it's still good storytelling, but the dialogue is just the most turgid nonsense. You know, people can rip on Brian Michael Bendis all he wants, but I can still read Ultimate Spider-Man. I sure as hell can't go back to Onslaught and all that stuff anymore.
Okay.
So yeah, that is all to preface the fact that just because movies are being based on things you've heard of before doesn't mean that anything's any worse than anything was back in the 30s. Even it's always been a business. It's always been lowest common denominator, and you've always had to dig for the good stuff. And frankly, the fact that we only remember the good stuff is part of the phenomenon.
Yeah.
Like, go back and look, you know, pick any movie that you think was amazing, any great Hitchcock film, you know, Psycho. Let's pick Psycho. And go back and look at the release schedule for movies in 1963 when Psycho came out and see how many of those you remember. I bet a lot of them are trash you've never heard of, because most things are. And it's nothing. The cream will rise, and in 20 years, you have people, people who were like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 during the Avengers Endgame era complaining about how the current Avengers stuff just doesn't have the heart that the Avengers did back when Robert Downey Jr. was Iron Man. Well,
Matt, what prompted this discussion from me was the first full trailer for the Halo TV series on Paramount Plus.
And I will say, you know, I was pretty critical of the teaser for that because I didn't think I thought it looked like a CW show from like the 2010s. I think this trailer looks great.
Yeah, I'm all over it, man.
I think they stepped it up on this one, and this looks like a really solid thing. I also bolster that by saying that I had several people I know who have never touched a Halo game text me and say, like, that Halo thing looks amazing. I kind of want to play the games now. And I'm like, well, they don't look like that. Like,
not yet.
Like imagine seeing this and then having the first Halo recommended to you. Right. You're like, what the fuck?
How is this the same thing?
No, this looks really good.
I think it looks awesome. It looks Mandalorian level to me. And
yeah, I would agree with that.
That shot right there, fighting the elites.
I especially like that shot because when you're in first person, you forget how big they are.
I'm just going to rewind that and watch that again.
You forget how big the elites are. They're like 10 feet tall.
Awesome. Seeing some of this stuff well represented, it's awesome. Look how huge they are.
Yeah. I mean, they are that big.
Yeah, the scale you don't get from the games for whatever reason. Anyway, the irony is that I'm really hyped for this show now, and I think this trailer is awesome, and I think I'm really excited. I may actually get Paramount Plus. I hope they release it all at once. I only have to get it for a month. Because what I end up doing with Disney Plus is I wait till the season's done. So right now I'm waiting for the Boba Fett show to finish up so I can get Disney Plus for a month and watch everything for a month and then get rid of it. Hopefully with Paramount Plus, they put it all up at once and they don't drag it out across like 2.5 months or whatever. But anyway,
I think they'll drag it out across like 6 weeks.
Yeah. But ironically,
I prepaid for 3 years of Disney Plus. So
did you? It doesn't matter to you. Ironically, this looks so awesome that I started thinking about all the other stuff. And Matt, some of the gaming-related movies and TV shows that are coming out, to me, are insane. And it's hard for me to think anything else, but they can't come up with better ideas than what they're getting from games. So we just found out that The Rock is going to star in a new Call of Duty movie. It's crazy that they haven't honestly made a Call of Duty movie until now.
I mean, one of the reasons is probably they're like, who gives a shit? Like, Call of Duty movie is just a war movie.
I know.
Like, who cares? Like, that's been done 1,000 times, and I guarantee better than whatever they're going to do for a Call of Duty movie with The Rock.
What era do you think they're going to go? Because it could be any era with Call of Duty. It could be go back to World War I. It could be in the future.
Conventional wisdom says you do Modern Warfare.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
And he'll play Soap.
That's the B-roll that I pulled for it.
Or maybe he'll be Captain Price.
So we definitely agree. That's the B-roll I pulled. I'm like, Modern Warfare 2, I think probably is right about where it's going to be. So that's what I would guess too.
The invasion of America for Modern Warfare 2 is probably about the right level of bombast for a modern hack. Like, it's probably who's gonna probably make that? Roland Emmerich? I feel like it's probably his next project after this Moonfall crap.
Yeah. I would guess.
What an embarrassing everything that is.
Yep. And
that's an original idea. And it's terrible. So doesn't mean anything.
Here's actually the game that I think could make the best TV show or film. It Takes Two.
Yeah, It Takes Two is a solid idea.
It was just announced yesterday that Hazelight signed a deal with that SJ2 or whatever it's called, that studio that works on a lot of game stuff.
Yeah.
What I like about this, and I mentioned this in Good Morning Gaming today, is that it's not this deathly serious thing. It's like a comedy, like a sitcom. It'll be fun and funny and heartwarming. Everything that every other video game, movie, or TV show is not.
Yeah. Well, there's an element of this where it's like the premise you could kind of see it being like a DreamWorks or a Pixar thing.
Yes, absolutely.
The idea is fertile.
It's like an anti-buddy
maybe
film.
that's why I bet EA doesn't really care about whether the sales did well or not because he gave them this thing that they can shop around as a bigger IP.
I agree. I think totally. I think this is a good fit actually.
Yeah. No, of everything announced for these things, I think this makes the most sense, with maybe the exception of The Last of Us, but we'll see how that turns out.
Yep. And then they announced that Mortal Kombat 2 is on the way.
Sure.
Which I'm totally fine with. I thought the last one was good.
It was fine.
Yeah. I probably wouldn't have been happy if I had paid $50 to go see it with my wife at the theater, but sitting at home watching it on HBO Go, I was totally cool with it.
Mortal Kombat was my first movie back in theaters after the lockdown.
So it always had that special place in your heart.
A little bit. It was exactly the right piece of trash to go back because there's an element of not being able to fully pay attention because oh my god, there's so many people.
I'm back in there. There's too many people in here. Yeah.
No, it wasn't too many people. It was just oh, look at people.
Actual people.
It was a novelty. It wasn't I wasn't afraid of it. But no, I liked it. It was good. It was clever stuff and fun stuff, and there was some funny stuff. I really liked Kung Lao and Liu Kang.
I enjoyed it.
It was good.
It was better than most gaming movies
for sure. But also, Mortal Kombat has the advantage of being basically a game that they made out of Enter the Dragon. You know, they Mortal Kombat's already influenced by movies already. That comes from kung fu movies and ninja stuff and all.
Just the graphics
so you just translate
from
it
the
back.
First game, the weird stop motion cell. I didn't. What did they call that style?
That's just motion capture. That's just digitized motion.
Yeah,
that's
actually using photographs of the
video
characters.
They just stuck them in front of a video camera, and that was
crazy. And then here's where it starts to get a little dicey. Sleeping Dogs. There's a movie in development for Sleeping Dogs.
Again, like Mortal Kombat, it's just drawing from existing films.
No, I get it, but nobody even knows what Sleeping Dogs is. It was never a big hit. People like us.
Okay, but are we upset that they're not doing original stuff, or are they or what?
No, I can't understand why they're needing to pull ideas and concepts from games like Sleeping Dogs.
They're not. They don't need to. But if you present to a studio executive, here is this thing that's a big budget game that exists and has sold this many copies, and if we make a movie out of it, people will have already heard of it. You can get money and funding that way.
But it didn't sell well, and honestly,
but it sold a lot of copies at $4 each. I think it moved a lot of copies on deep discount over the years, especially the definitive edition.
But I'll be honest with you, Matt. A lot of times, I forget what the name of this is. I always have to ask you or someone else. What was that game that was
originally
Hong
it was
Kong?
going to be True Crime Streets of Hong Kong.
Right. My point is I'm really into this stuff, and I hardly remember Sleeping Dogs.
I remember I played Sleeping Dogs 3 times.
Wow.
I actually really liked it. It's one of the reasons I'm excited about Sifu. Because there's a little bit of that kung fu thing to it, and I really like kung fu movies and Hong Kong cinema and all that stuff. I just got the volume 1 of the big Shaw Brothers Studios Blu-ray set with all those kung fu movies I used to watch. and I love the old John Woo stuff. Like, this was right up my alley. So yeah, I'm into it. And if this pitch is what you need to do to get a movie like this off the ground with a big budget, sure, I guess. Like, I don't, Sleeping Dogs is not as an IP is not your ticket to big money $1 billion box office, but it might be your ticket to get it made at all, because it's a proven thing to someone who doesn't know anything about video games. Like, that's what you got to keep in mind, is like the people they're pitching this stuff to are just seeing a bunch of numbers on a paper. They don't necessarily know that no one who loves video games would necessarily call Sleeping Dogs one of the top IPs of whatever, Yeah,
but I mean, look, there are plenty of similar films that have their Ong Bak, for example. That movie didn't need any sort of
sure, but that was not made in America.
I know, but still, it's a movie that did very well and became popular internationally. Even
doesn't matter. The people that are accepting these pitches don't know what that is, and it didn't do well here, so they don't care. At best, you would be able to pitch a remake of it. You know what I mean?
But this is, I hear you. But this is, again, getting to the whole point of this, where these people are looking at a bunch of numbers on a paper because they can't come up with better ideas on their own.
No,
they're about to make a film about this marginal game that I can't even remember the title of.
It's not about not being able to come up with ideas. They don't care about ideas. They are looking for something that is going to be a hit and be a proven investment. That has nothing to do with coming up with ideas.
But I just don't understand how Sleeping Dogs can rationalize that.
Because they were able to show them a bunch of sales numbers that seems to indicate to them that it's a popular thing, and it'll be less of a risk than making something exactly like it that is not called something that people already know.
Okay,
that's all it is.
How about Disco Elysium then? Because they're making a movie about... And honestly, this may be the best movie of them all.
Yeah, Disco Elysium actually has...
the opportunity to be a good film.
I mean, it's literally just... I mean, Disco Elysium, in some ways, when you think about it, is just a 14-hour monologue.
Yeah.
It could be a good stage play. Disco Elysium, so I didn't know they were making a movie out of this. So I don't know what studio this is.
It's the same one that's working on... It's S2J or whatever it's called.
Okay, so someone there probably just knows what this game is and knows that they can make something crazy out of it.
Yeah, but how do you sell that to a studio? Like,
in this case, I think you just pitch how weird it is. Like, Disco Elysium is probably not a case of, like, brand recognition. It's just like, wow, this is weird, and, like, instead of making up a whole world, we could just take this one and run with it. Because the setting of Disco Elysium is actually really interesting. You could tell a lot more stories with that. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, like as I said when I started talking about it, it's probably like the most likely to actually make a good movie, other than maybe It Takes Two. But I just, in
this case, it's probably not even. It's just like this actually is a good idea,
right?
So like you're going to take that and license it and make a movie out of it. Like that's classic Godfather style right there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that Hollywood is in. I understand it's a law of diminishing returns. As long as time goes on, it gets more and more difficult to create something unique because people are always trying to do it. I get that angle of it, but it really just feels like it's just reached the dead end at this point.
For what?
For unique ideas in their content. Like, I just feel like everything is a rehash of something that was made before, or it's a reboot, or it's based on a comic, or it's based on a video game.
That's, again, because you're only looking at the tentpole stuff that comes out like every couple of weeks.
Maybe.
You're thinking about like 30 movies in a year. 150 movies come out a year, and are all of them winners? No, but there's a bunch of you're leaving out stuff like The Lighthouse, and like the crazy stuff like that, or anything that Thomas Anderson makes, or Wes Anderson, or kind of thing, or Edgar Wright just came out with Last Night in Soho. That's a whole separate thing, but you wouldn't have known about it necessarily unless you were paying attention, because it's not a Marvel movie, it's not a DC movie, it's not.
So do you think big
budget?
Also,
look, I don't think the
films are always going to be based on existing stuff now. Do you think that's just going to be the way it is?
It's been that way for a very long time, and at the very least, even when you're talking about original.
Some Tom Cruise stuff isn't, or wait, maybe it is actually. I just don't know it.
I mean, Tom Cruise has 2 Mission Impossible movies and a Top Gun sequel coming.
What was the one where he lived in that house? It was like up in the sky.
Oblivion?
Maybe. It had 2 different titles. It had one title in the U.S. and then one title.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Yeah, that was the original IP.
No,
right?
that was based on a Japanese manga.
Oh, okay.
Light novel. It was a light novel.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it just seems like.
So if you don't know it wasn't based on something, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I'm saying. This is basing things on video games tends to be more cynical, and they must see some, because part of it's just because video games are such a big business that I think studio executives believe that there must be a golden ticket somewhere in there to like find the winning formula, just like you had to find the winning formula for superhero movies, which took a while. Like you had Batman '89, which gave you sort of the Avi Arad formula for how you do a superhero movie, and then you had Blade save that from oblivion. And then Spider-Man taught you that you could actually do, and X-Men to some degree, mostly Spider-Man taught you that you could be true to the comic book and not bomb. And then Marvel Cinematic Universe turned into a phenomenon. So people are basically looking for that Batman '89 for video game movies. Will they find it? I don't know. Will they find it among this group? I don't know.
Seems more likely TV shows.
I think Halo and Last of Us are going to have more of an impact in that regard. And also I think the streaming prestige TV series I think is a more accurate fit to most video game stories.
I agree.
Just because video game stories tend to be drawn out and
they
more,
take 40 hours to experience.
There's more you can do with the characters there. So I think that's probably true. And look, like it goes all of, and one of the biggest things you have to remember right now is because everything costs so much because there's no real B tier anymore. You're either spending,
indie or
you're either spending 10 to 20 million or you're spending 200 million.
Yeah.
And so I want to read you. I don't know where this came from. I can't remember what I screenshotted it from, but I screenshotted it from an article about the movies that Mattel has in the pipeline. And Mattel, the toy company Mattel. I read this paragraph and I think I went insane for a time. So I'm just going to read this to you. Okay. This is real.
All right.
This is not made up. Warner Brothers is in prep for Barbie, starring Margot Robbie and
Barbie movie
starring Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, directed by Greta Gerwig, who co-wrote the screenplay with partner Noah Baumbach. Noah Baumbach wrote The Squid and the Whale.
What?
And if you don't know what that is, look it up and look at the awards. That is
wow.
That is. I mean, he also was credited as a co-writer on Madagascar 3. So like, he's paying the bills. Like, no hate there. Yeah. But that is a change. They are also at script stage on a Hot Wheels film.
What is that? How do you make a film about Hot Wheels?
I don't know.
Like,
we kind of did that already. It was called Speed Racer, and it bombed.
Which actually,
it's great. Speed Racer is great.
I was gonna say, like,
but
it's really underrated. That movie.
In July, Netflix will shoot the anticipated remount of Masters of the Universe with Kyle Allen starring as the buff blonde He-Man.
That I can get.
That I can see. Okay, okay, we've done that before.
Yeah.
Universal Pictures is at work on a horror franchise based on the Magic 8 Ball with Blumhouse.
Wait a minute. How do you make a movie about a Magic 8 Ball?
I assume if you get a bad answer from the Magic 8 Ball, you die or something? It's like a Ouija board thing? I don't know. This is where I started to lose my mind, right here in the paragraph.
Mattel was paid money for that license to the Magic 8
Ball. Yeah. And the studio is bringing Rock'em Sock'em Robots to life with Vin Diesel. At Paramount, Tom Hanks will embody his childhood favorite Major Matt Mason, the astronaut action figure, which is before our time.
Matt, isn't this kind of making my point for me, though?
No, because...
If they're making a movie about a Magic 8 Ball...
The toy stuff is bizarre. I mean, with a Beautiful Mind screenwriter Akiva Goldsman on that one. Now, Akiva Goldsman also wrote some of the worst movies ever made, so not a super drop there. Because he also wrote Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. Let's not go, and Lost in Space. Like, let's not go crazy. And MGM will put forth Polly Pocket with writer-director Lena Dunham and star Lily Collins. And that's where we are.
And so after you read that, you still will say that Hollywood is not creatively bankrupt.
Well, Mattel has... No, I'm not, because that's Mattel saying, please make movies out of our stupid things.
Doing it.
They're giving them money to do it.
Oh, wait, Mattel's paying them.
Most of these projects will never come to fruition.
I thought that they were paying Mattel for the licenses.
They're forming partnerships, like Transformers.
Okay,
the idea is you get them to make a movie, and the movie raises the profile of the brand, and you make a ton of money on merchandise, and the studio makes money on the box office. That's the deal.
They sell a bunch of Magic 8 Balls.
Right. But also it's like, okay, how in the world does a Hot Wheels movie improve sales of Hot Wheels? Like, aren't Hot Wheels already kind of popular with every child in existence?
I mean, I buy them every Christmas for my nephews.
Right. So what is the expenditure you'd have to lay out, both Mattel and the studio, to make a Hot Wheels movie on the level that you'd have to make to be at a blockbuster? what is that? Why even bother?
I don't know.
Like that's my forget the Hollywood bankrupt creative things. Like, what do you people do? Like, do you have too much money? Because I can help you get rid of some of that.
Yeah, we all could. Yeah. It's nuts.
I probably
it's bizarre.
described $3 billion worth of budget off that paragraph. It's like, just throw 500,000 at us. We'll make you something better than that.
It's nuts. So anyway, I don't know how much you guys like or dislike the various. Like, I did like the new Witcher season. Have you watched that yet?
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to share any spoilers then. But I thought it was good. I didn't think it was as good as the first season, and I feel like it ended quite abruptly. But it was still really good. So there are some examples. I don't know how you guys feel. Maybe you guys are liking all the gaming movies and TV shows that are coming out. We are definitely going to get a whole lot more of them.
I mean, I'm sure they got to be better than Pixels.
Yeah, maybe. Let's go to
Pixels
our chat,
is one of the worst things I've ever seen. So Adam Sandler was not hitting him out of the park at the time.
Noxatornitis says, making movies about an 8-ball is actually the opposite of creatively bankrupt.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Maybe they just change it to enchanted cocaine.
Because you'd have to be so creative to make a film about a magic 8-ball. You'd have to be a genius.
And the thing is, because that's attached to Blumhouse, that's the one that has the best chance of actually coming out.
That's hilarious. He says, hey, if you want an original idea, make a movie about an 8-ball. It's true. Wasn't there already a Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie with Hugh Jackman?
Yeah, the Real Steel.
But it wasn't. It
wasn't based on Rock'em. But again,
I can see where he thought that's what it was, though.
Oh no, it's definitely the same concept. So was Robot Jocks. While we're at it,
yeah.
Who remembers Robot Jocks?
Yeah,
yeah?
I do not actually.
That was a terrible mech. That was maybe the first use of like piloted mechs in a Western movie. It was like 90. I was in high school when that came out.
Lazily Diligent. I'm loving the Witcher show, but it has a leading man who loves the IP and fights for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Witcher has really benefited from the fact that Henry Cavill is a giant nerd.
This has become a running joke in the chat. I've actually got a killer concept for an 8-ball movie. Mm-hmm. Slagathor. Oh, man. So anyway, love it or hate them. Love them or hate them. You're going to get a lot more gaming movies and TV shows coming up. Like, I'll say this. Like, I always at least watch them out of curiosity. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them I may not make it more than 20 minutes in or whatever before I turn it off. But I do always give them a chance.
Yeah,
so,
I mean...
And that's more than... Like, if I go through Netflix and I'm looking at all the movies, like, that's more than I can say than most of the stuff I just keep browsing right past. Just because it's just a bunch of just junk.
Yeah.
Typically.
I'm waiting for the Tetris movie.
Oh, it's actually happening, isn't it?
It's been talked about several times.
Yeah, I've heard it talked about before. It's nuts. So
they made a Battleship movie.
How hard is it now to get... They did. How hard is it now... Rampage. They made a Rampage movie.
Yeah.
How hard is it now...
It took me a trailer and a half to figure out, that's actually based on the game. That's so weird.
How hard is it now, or is it impossible, to pitch a script for a new IP for a big budget film?
You have to be an established person. You have to be a Christopher Nolan or a
who believes in the project or whatever.
Moonfall is new IP.
Yeah.
It's not based on anything as far as I know.
Yeah.
It looks terrible, but it's a new. There's your new idea, kids. Go see Moonfall if you want to support originality.
Yeah. And there are some, like, what's that movie about with Sandra Bullock where she's trapped in space?
Gravity.
Yeah,
I mean, that wasn't
every
super high
once
budget.
in a while, like, stuff like that comes around.
Well, Gravity was not a cheap movie, but it was more not expected to be the hit it was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And then there's the one where Matt Damon goes to space and, like, grows like.
Well, The Martian was based on a book.
Oh, it was. Okay. See, I don't even know a lot of this stuff.
Martian's based on a book, and it was a Ridley Scott film. That's why it got made. Is Ridley Scott wanted to do it.
Yeah, big directors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably don't have a lot of Ridley Scott and Scorsese are probably not championing at the bit to make a I don't know, Gears of War movie or something, which is what I thought that the Rock thing was going to be.
Yeah. I actually called Call of Duty. I don't know why. It just popped into my head. Because, honestly, he doesn't seem like a good fit for Call of Duty. He's, too big.
Yeah, when he said, like, I figured it was Gears of War because he just looks like about the size of a Gears of War guy.
My second guess was God of War, because he would make a pretty good Kratos.
Yeah. You know who I don't know if he can act, but I don't
know if The Rock can act.
Yeah, he'd do okay. I'd pick to play Kratos out of the wrestlers turned actors stable. Yeah. Triple H.
Yeah.
Triple H has the haggardness of you weight him down and all the beard and everything, and he would definitely look like Kratos.
Yep. Okay, we got to move on. We're running out of time. But anyway, again, if you love video game movies, you're going to have a great couple years coming up. There's tons of stuff coming out.
Of course, we haven't even seen what Kojima's working on.
Right.
With his movie studio.
Oh, jeez. Well, you know what it's going to be. It's going to be something based on one of his properties. It's not. I doubt it'll be something original.
It's going to be well, it was never anything original. Metal Gear is literally Escape from New York,
right.
like basically like
repurposed
with the serial number filed off.
Yeah.
So, you go back to the early Kojima stuff, and it's just like I don't know how anybody didn't sue you.
I know he rips stuff just. Blatantly.
Snatcher is just Blade Runner. It's just Blade Runner.
Yeah,
like not even.
But you really can't get sued for stuff like that.
Very well. Also,
really
nobody
hard.
knew what it was at the time. That was like you. There's a whole thing on YouTube where if you go and you can look up like old video game music that sounds exactly like pop music at the time, and like some of it's pretty obscure music, but some of it's like there's a bunch of like there's a bunch of songs from there's a Mega Man. I can't remember which one. One of the Mega Man levels in 1 or 2 is literally Journey's Faithfully played faster, and it's like
it's like Vanilla Ice with Queen. Well, he changes one note in the bass line.
These are actually stealing the melody, like
the actual melody,
or like Evangelion, the original Evangelion. There was a theme they played during the like when they were preparing the mechs and doing all that, and it's literally the James Bond. Not the James Bond like that, but it's the music that plays when James. No.
That's Mission Impossible.
That's Mission Impossible. It's James. If you go to From Russia with Love, it's just called James Bond in the soundtrack, but it's like him sneaking around, and it's a very percussion heavy theme, and like they had to license it in the end because like it was basically a thing where it's like we didn't think anyone was ever going to notice because it wasn't going to play outside of Japan and nobody would care, but then it became an international phenomenon, and video games did that too. Same reason that the covers of a bunch of NES games are literally traces of movie posters.
It's really hard to prosecute that. Like Vanilla Ice, I think won his case because he changed one note in that bass line.
Yeah, well that was the fight over sampling at the time.
Except I don't think that was a sample. I think that they redid it, the bass line, and just changed one note. So that they could get away with it.
There were a bunch of lawsuits about stuff like that at the time.
Yeah.
You never know. Like, what was it? What was the...
I know that was...
What was that Bittersweet Symphony? Like they got no money from that because they decided the like a drum fill was identical to the way the Rolling Stones did it, and so they got all the money for that.
Yep, great song though.
I'm just saying that somebody probably should have sued the Contra cover because, Contra was like it's just Schwarzenegger and Stallone.
Yeah,
basically
blatant. Yep. All right, it's time to move on. I'm going to talk next about a game that was announced this week, probably the biggest game announcement from the week, and that is Crysis 4. Matt, what do you remember about Crysis?
I remember can it run Crysis?
Yeah, it was like a benchmark for PCs. Yeah.
I remember switching the abilities in the suit, and I remember I played Crysis 1 and 2, the remasters, not too long ago.
Oh, you did?
When they came out.
What did you think of them?
All the way,
going back to them?
It's weird because I've been conditioned by modern games the way I have, I was playing them as stealth games. Like I was trying to sneak around and kill guys before they saw me. And eventually I was like, oh, right, I'm supposed to run in and blow them away. I'm supposed to use the powers of the suit and be more powerful and shoot everybody and not like sneak around and do everything perfectly. So I had to kind of relearn that. And then that was weird. It's from a different era. It's from a different time.
They are. And so I'm shocked that the series is coming back. I'll be honest.
I mean, I assume it's going to be very different.
It's never sold very well at all.
Yeah, they got 3 of them made, though.
I know. And I remember
being surprised that 3 was getting made.
I remember surprised the second one was being made. Like, because the first one was like a technical marvel.
Yeah.
But it didn't sell especially well.
No.
And most
in part because nobody could run it.
Yeah.
Like, why would you buy something you couldn't run?
even play. Yeah.
And it wasn't good enough to buy a new graphics card for.
Right.
That was the real problem. It wasn't a revolution in terms of being a game.
Play.
It was just like a visual, it was
how
a
you
benchmark.
play it. Yeah. And I remember Chell came by, our buddy Chell, who works in PR, came by to show me the second game. And, I remember it was one of the most convoluted and complicated control schemes that someone had ever demoed to me before. Like, to the point where he's like, most of the people on this tour aren't playing the game, they're just letting me play it. And I was like, that's really bad, dude.
Yeah.
Like...
I mean, especially if you're playing keyboard and mouse, like Crysis 1, 2, and 3 are like typing.
Yeah.
Because you got to constantly be switching...
Right.
Switching
through all your bionic abilities and all your powers.
Up, that, and let that recharge, and it's a lot.
But
it barely maps on a controller.
Right. But like you, Matt, like I ask you, what do you remember about Crysis? You remember that it was a benchmark for PCs, and that's in me too.
And like aliens invaded at some point.
But right, can you remember really anything about it? It's just completely forgettable.
Not really, yeah.
What we're seeing here, this is Crysis 3, also completely forgettable.
I remember for a time I thought it was like a follow-up to Far Cry.
Right.
Because the first Far Cry was basically Crysis 0.
It was, yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Wasn't until Far Cry 2 when the Crytek guys left the franchise that like Far Cry 2 found the formula that become modern Far Cry.
Yeah, that's
the first
true.
one was basically Crysis. Like you went through a big open forested jungle area and ended up fighting monsters by the end.
Yeah, I mean, I
remember more about Far Cry than any of these.
Right. I don't remember hardly anything about because they're so forgettable. There's nothing special about
I would never
them.
have known which one this is from.
Right. I could have shown you this and you would have never known which of the 3 games it was from. No clue. And I think most people feel the same way. Like there's some IP.
Like I know 3 emphasized the bow more.
The bow was kind of a big deal in all of them, I thought.
Yeah, not more in 2 and 3 because it was sort of following the trend at the time for having bows and everything. But 3 put the bow on the cover. I remember that.
Maybe. But it's just, why would this be revived, Matt? Because it's like just like we were talking about earlier. Because you've heard of it. That's it. And even for games, it's better to just have a name, even if it's not a name that engenders positive feelings from consumers.
Yep.
That's crazy.
I mean, you've heard of it. You're already further along than you would be if you hadn't heard of it.
But if you have negative connotations towards it,
I don't know if people have negative connotations. I don't know if I have any connotations to this.
Yeah, I'm kind of neutral on it.
I feel like the what was that? Was it Good Burger? The movie where he looks at the paper and he goes, "I know some of these words." Like that's how I feel about Crysis.
So, do you think that they need to completely ditch what it was before?
I mean, I think they need to revamp it into basically Far Cry. Yeah. Run and gun stuff isn't really a thing anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could try to make it like that. But if you do run and gun, you're up against Doom and Doom Eternal, and you're never going to make a Crysis game as good as Doom Eternal. So,
you could
theoretically, but they're not.
They're not. You're right. Yeah, I've never been excited for this franchise. Like, I really just thought it was gone for good. I really didn't expect it to ever come back.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of who owned it anymore.
Yeah.
Is it Take-Two?
It's EA, isn't it?
Is it EA? Oh, yeah, EA, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I believe Electronic Arts still owns the IP.
So not only that, it's about EA making a game that isn't Battlefield or Madden or FIFA.
Yeah.
That's a landmark.
Everyone in the chat is saying the only thing I know about it is that Digital Foundry loves it.
Oh yeah,
because they use it for their benchmarks.
Yeah, it's still a good benchmark game. Yeah, especially when they I think you put ray tracing in it, and it's even.
Jerry Boulet, I believe that's the right way to pronounce his name, says Crysis 1 was great in terms of open world shooter. Crysis 2 had moments, but forgettable. Crysis 3 was better than 2. I am happy we will get 4. Wow. Vincent is saying Crytek self-published the remakes, so it looks like it actually owns the IP now.
That is interesting.
Which explains everything.
Yeah.
That's why it's coming back, because Crytek owns it, and it's what they've got. Okay, that makes everything make more sense now.
And the Eviloni 5 might have a point there, too. They're feeling left out in the dev purchase wars, trying to make themselves more attractive.
Oh, you think this may be to drum up...
Hey, look what we can do.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it is crazy that they created a game that's like 15-some years old.
Oh, no, we got bought by Nintendo.
And some PCs still can't run it. Think about that. The game's like 15, 20 years old, and there's still a lot of PCs that are being built now that cannot run the game.
Meanwhile, you can run Doom on toasters.
Right.
Actual toasters.
Real, like your refrigerator.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Refrigerators can run. Birth control tests, or pregnancy tests can run Doom.
Run Doom. That's nuts. And here's
Carmack is a wizard.
Yeah,
I gotta give him that.
Here actually is the first Crysis, the benchmark, which now you look at it, it's like, really?
And also it's like the physics, like nobody was, it was like a use of physics that just didn't exist. The shadows.
That's really what brought GPUs to their knees, was the physics and the lighting. Yeah, absolutely. Where would you put your hype level for Crysis 4 on a scale of 1 to 10, Matt?
I don't know, somewhere like east of Pomona. Like,
I give it a 4.
yeah, I
That's
guess
about
so.
where I'm at on Crysis at this point.
Like, I think you could revamp this into something really cool. I just don't know if they
Bionic
will.
soldier shooter
Yeah, like, you know,
type thingy.
like a super powered Far Cry. Cool. Like, I'm into that. But like, just even having recently gone back to the remakes, like they don't feel good.
Yeah,
They feel slippery and thin. If that makes any sense.
thin.
Like it just feels everything feels
Like it's made out of paper or
sort
something.
of, yeah. Like I don't get a sense of like concreteness from the world or from the character or anything like that. A little bit, like sometimes when you like weight the character down with the shield, the hardening ability.
Yeah.
But like in general, it just all felt very flimsy.
Okay.
Especially when you sprinted. Like I never felt like in control really.
Well, that's because you're bionic, and like if you use the abilities while you're running, it was very hard to control.
Yeah.
But I liked that. That felt realistic to me because, especially at first,
Hollow. That's a good description.
Yeah.
Andy Monahan. No, I get what that means, but realistic doesn't always mean good. Like Master Chief is also bionic, but it doesn't feel like that when he runs
no.
and when he slides and all
Yeah.
that. I feel in control of it.
I thought it made sense at the beginning of Crysis when you first get the abilities and you're like, whoa, like how do I handle this stuff? But you're right, keeping it that way throughout the entirety of the game made no sense whatsoever. So I'm right there with you. But anyway, Crysis 4, a long ways away. We showed you the teaser trailer for it. They didn't even show a lick of in-game footage yet. My guess is best case scenario, mid-2024, Q4 2024, something like that before we actually see it. Maybe at E3 we get the first look at the actual game. If there isn't any sort of E3, whatever the hell ends up happening in June, we'll see.
Go ask Jeff.
Go ask Keeley. He'll tell you. But anyway, I just wanted to get that on your radar. Crysis 4 is on the way. Let's move on. We're going to talk, lastly, about a new wave that I believe was started. Actually, it's hard to say who started it. Maybe Ubisoft started it. And that is the recent trend of having tons of studios working on one game.
I mean, I associate that with Call of Duty.
Right,
earliest
but
on.
did Ubisoft do it first?
I think COD split things up between like Treyarch and Sledgehammer and Infinity Ward, and then eventually everything just started crossing over. And then every time one of their other companies like Raven or High Moon would make something that didn't perform up to snuff, they just get folded into the machine. And like High Moon's been making like maps or whatever for Call of Duty games since 2012.
Has it been that long now?
Since Fall Cybertron didn't perform, yeah. It's been like 10 years.
Yeah, that would be
Raven,
probably
too.
before Ubi started pulling in like all their teams to finish games.
Yeah, certainly before that became like the standard UB format.
Right.
I mean, they clearly had international teams working on like Assassin's Creed and the big guns, but like I think it's only until in the last like 5 to 7 years that you're seeing like everything they make has like everybody from all over the world on it.
Well, what prompted this discussion, Matt, is that this week it was uncovered that 11 studios are working on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, the reboot of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, which is this year's Call of Duty release. 11 studios. Do you foresee that continuing with new ownership?
Probably not. Not at that size. Anyway, I feel like you need to dedicate these teams to make a Call of Duty team. Maybe they can be all over the world and they'd be different. There's a COD LA and a COD Singapore and a COD whatever. But they should all be dedicated to it, I guess. I mean, Ubisoft proves it can work. Like those games don't feel made by a whole bunch of different things.
No, I do. Look, I do feel like, particularly with Vanguard, I really felt like I could see the game was made by different teams. Like it didn't feel consistent across all the different modes: the multiplayer, the campaign, and the zombies. And
I mean, I haven't played that, but like, I think it probably depends on the project. Like, I can't really see the seams on something like Watch Dogs Legion or Assassin's Creed Valhalla. But those only really have one mode,
right? Yeah, but you're right; those are pretty consistent. Like, I don't remember finding parts of those games where I was like, this part seems out of place.
Yeah. But like 600 people worked on those games all around the world. Mm-hmm. The question I have is like, okay, so you've got 11 teams on Call of Duty to end up with what? Call of Duty again.
Right.
Why, it used to just be Infinity Ward made these things. Why does it take this many people to make something that you should have? Because
they want it out every year.
Right.
Instead of, because if it's Infinity Ward, you can only get it every 2 or 3 years.
But that's why they brought in Treyarch to make alternate ones, and then Sledgehammer to do every third year. But now so you have 11 teams on next year's as well. Like
I don't know how that works when they switch over and all those teams.
I figure it's just like an assembly line thing. Like you've got the lead team, which is would have been Infinity Ward or Treyarch or Sledgehammer, and then you've got all these subsidiary teams that just do the grunt work for them. You're like, okay, well, this is Infinite Warfare is going to be this. Okay, well, this team over here makes the texture stuff, and this team over here handles the back end, and this team over here deals with the UI, and this team over here does the meanwhile the main team is kind of designing the levels and designing the gameplay and the kind of the meat and potatoes. That would be my guess of how that works. Sometimes the Ubisoft things seem to even have there's a whole separate music team that isn't even related, whereas like Infinity Ward used to do that in house. It feels like an assembly line to me. Everyone makes a different part of it, and it all either comes together or it doesn't.
And Call of Duty, to me, actually the last few entries, I felt like the disparate parts of the game did not feel like a cohesive whole.
Well, and to say nothing of the zombie stuff, which is a whole separate thing that probably other teams work on all on their own.
They do. I mean, typically the zombies mode is almost always handled by Treyarch, regardless of whether it's Treyarch's game or not, and it doesn't always fit with the other parts of the game. It stands out to me anyway.
So you've got like a group at Treyarch that's making the next Call of Duty main thing, but you've also got a group at Treyarch that just eternally works on zombie stuff and that kind of thing. So
it's not ideal.
No, I wouldn't think so.
And right now, Perfect Dark now has 3 studios working on it, the new Perfect Dark. So you have the Initiative, which is the new studio here in LA that was supposed to build the game. 3 weeks ago, we find out that Crystal Dynamics has moved over and started helping them, and now a third studio.
We found that a long time ago.
Was it that long ago?
It was months ago.
Was it months ago? And now we find out that a third studio has jumped on Perfect Dark as well, which to me is a huge red flag. To me, that shows that they're having problems developing the game. Or they're trying to get it out much more quickly than they normally would have if they built it by themselves. Or maybe they're doing the same thing they're doing with Call of Duty, where they have one team working on the campaign, one team working on multiplayer.
That's probably something of along the lines of what's happening. Also, I would imagine some of that's got to be people putting their heads together to make Perfect Dark something anybody cares about in 2022. Mm-hmm. You gotta figure out a way to give that thing a hook that anyone's gonna look at it twice, and I don't know what that is.
I don't either. I don't know what it would be at this point because Joanna's not enough.
No.
It is an espionage franchise,
right?
And honestly, there aren't that many of those anymore that actually do the espionage part of it.
I assume this is kind of a start over sort of thing, but I was one of the hooks of Perfect Dark was sort of playing on the X-Files kind of like government conspiracy thing, and I don't think that really plays the same way now because people think that shit's real. So
right. It's not a parody anymore.
I don't know. I mean, I think you're going to see increasingly people just sort of moving, team members over as they need to finish this or I don't think it's not a red flag to me that someone brought in a cleanup hitter. But who knows what's happening in Perfect. I don't have any faith in the Perfect Dark game just on the back of the fact that I don't think Perfect Dark has ever been particularly good. And I don't see even if you did think it was good, I don't know what the relevance of it is now.
Well, I think it was good back in 2001 or whenever it came out.
I never liked it very much.
I mean, I didn't like it as much as GoldenEye, but it was still, if you compare it to other shooters, it was at the top of the pile. I mean...
Not on PC.
Yeah. I guess it depends. But...
I might have liked it better if it didn't run like crap, but by the time I was able to run it well on Rare Replay, I didn't care anymore because it was 15 years later.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, we were talking earlier about N64 games running at 15 frames per second. Mm-hmm. Perfect Dark, actually all Rare's games are the poster child for that on the N64.
Yeah, Rare always pushed it a little further than they probably should have.
Yep.
Which at the time was kind of admirable, but it didn't age very well.
And if you look back, Resident Evil 6, that game was built by multiple teams. And if there is any game in the history of the gaming industry where it is blatantly obvious that you had multiple teams working on the same project and then snapping all their pieces together, it was Resident Evil 6. Mm-hmm. Because...
And Capcom, I never felt like Capcom had the infrastructure for that to begin with.
Not like Ubisoft. Yeah. That was a long time ago. That was before Ubisoft started doing what it's doing.
That was like 2011?
Yeah, I mean, that was really innovative at the time for game development, to have your bunch of your studios working on one project.
And on paper, it looks like, there's 3 different characters, and they all play totally differently, have very different approaches to how their campaigns work. It's like, okay, cool, but what you didn't know is it just kind of created this weird dissonance.
Yeah, when you snap them together, they don't fit. You have this one part that feels like classic Resident Evil. You have this other part that feels like the more action-heavy Resident Evil 5.
Chris Redfield punching boulders.
Yeah, it just didn't fit because you have so many...
Did you guys all ever have a phone call or anything about this? Because I feel like you were making very different games.
Yeah. It feels like it's hit or miss. And it's really crazy when you think back, Matt. Did you know that 30 people built Sonic Adventure? For the Dreamcast?
I didn't know the number, but that makes
30
sense. Sonic
people.
team was not a huge team.
30 people made that game. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't that long ago. It was 98, 99, I guess.
98,
yeah. Things have changed so drastically in a short period of time. And I don't know if all of it's for the better. This is going to keep happening. Do you think it's a good way to develop games? Maybe it's a good way to develop single-player games?
I don't think there's an answer to that. I think it's good if it works and it's bad if it didn't, just like when you do it with one team.
Why do you think it does work in some cases and doesn't work in others?
Why does it work with one team sometimes and not with others? Why is Crysis 2 not good even though it was made by one team?
Yeah.
It's just some games are good, some games are bad. Projects have problems. Ideas don't come to fruition. I think it does help if you have an infrastructure in place, you know what you're doing, and kind of worked out a way for all these teams to communicate properly.
Yeah, because technology has changed as well since then. It's much easier to collaborate.
With everybody working from home for the last 2 years, you basically are all separate teams at this point.
You're basically making games on Slack and Zoom at this point. Yeah.
If you're on Discord, you're part of a separate team, basically.
What's
the difference at that point? It's not, the being all in the same building in the same city doesn't really matter anymore.
It doesn't matter. When
you're all sharing the same assets. And there's also an element, I'm sure this is part of Ubisoft's strategy, because they it's not just Montreal and LA and they're going to work on that. No, it's going to be Montreal and LA and San Francisco and Singapore and Shanghai and Paris. And what's the outcome of that? There is always someone working on the game 24/7. Mm-hmm. When this team goes to sleep, this other team gets up, looks at what was done, and continues from there.
I think that can present a lot of problems as well. Back in the day when we were redesigning game trailers and we were being forced to redesign it and put it onto the Viacom platform, we had people in Belarus who worked overnight. And it sucked because you come in the morning and they completely screw something up and work on it for 8 hours. And there was nobody there in the first hour to say, no, that's wrong. Don't keep doing that. And they would just work the whole day on something that would just had to be scrapped the next day. So there's, I think, mostly negatives when you try to work that way. I know technology has certainly helped with Zoom and all these other platforms that you can use now to collaborate.
Also, there are no games made now that aren't multiple teams, really. Your favorite games the last year and the years before were all, God of War had a bunch of teams on it.
Did it?
Yeah. Look at their credits. They've got credits for almost all these assisting teams and all this. Yeah, I
actually didn't notice that.
No game is made without outsourcing at the AAA level.
Oh yeah, you have studios that are just making assets or whatever. They're building desks or chairs or tables.
But that might be what's happening here with Perfect Dark. We don't know what they're doing.
It would be hard to imagine bringing studios in like that for such mundane tasks.
Perfect Dark's thing feels like some kind of conceptual issue. But in terms of something like Call of Duty, it's just, I think it's just people making assets around the clock.
Yeah.
It's a sweatshop, basically.
Yeah. And Activision...
But I don't expect a lot of artistic integrity out of Call of Duty, so what do you want?
Actually, Activision may have started doing that first with the Tony Hawk franchise.
Yeah.
And they started bringing in other of their smaller studios to help Neversoft finish up some of those early Tony Hawk games. That may have been the first time that really multi-platform or multi-developer development became a thing. But it's interesting. It is a relatively recent phenomenon in the industry, and it just seems to be getting bigger and bigger. And most of the biggest publishers are doing this now. You have even Sony. That's now Sony Bend just seems like it's going to maybe turn into a support studio, helping other first-party studios with take some of the work off the plate. I don't know. I guess what the question becomes, and maybe the question I wanted answered through this discussion was, is it better to have a studio making its own game that could become a huge hit and generate tons of revenue and become an IP that lasts forever, that eventually becomes a TV show and a film? Or is it better to have that studio helping the latest Call of Duty?
I don't think there's an answer to that question because it depends on the situation, and there's always a need for outsourcing teams. And if you're going to use Sony Bend for that, you're going to use Sony Bend for that.
I guess it's how you're allocating your resources. Like, maybe it's better to hire some developer for hire to do that stuff instead of having Sony Bend do it. Maybe it's better to have Sony Bend working on an IP instead of just doing support stuff for a remake of The Last of Us.
Clearly,
or whatever.
Sony disagrees.
Yeah. Well, obviously they do.
Yeah. I mean, also there's a limited number of developers out there. Like, you can't just keep setting up studios left and right. If you got these guys that are already there and organized more or less in Bend, Oregon, have them do what you need them to do.
Yeah.
Because having them make Days Gone for however many years it took didn't pay off for you.
That didn't work out. Yep. But Sony had to give the green light, so it's not all on Sony Bend. But anyway, just an interesting recent phenomenon in the games industry, and I just wanted to discuss it with Matt to see if we could figure anything out. I don't know that I feel any more informed after our discussion, though. Like, I still feel like I'm just...
I don't think there's any black and white answer there. Like, there's no AAA game now that isn't made by multiple studios. There's always a lead, usually. I think the key to the good ones is that there's a lead studio that has a creative vision and knows what the game needs to be and has the ability to sort of coordinate all that.
That's kind of the secret sauce, isn't it?
Yeah.
Having a leader who has the big vision in mind and can work with these satellites to make sure that they're all following in line to create a cohesive whole.
Well, I mean, look at it's any collaborative project. Even if there's only one team. Look what was going on with Ken Levine. Mm-hmm. You know, like, if there's no strong vision, if there's no strong view, if it just keeps changing all the time, you can't make anything.
Well, that's a good example too, because he also is using like a support studio to do a lot of the grunt work for his small team.
Yeah, but that's everyone now. I don't know why you put kind of that emphasis on that kind of stuff. It's just standard procedure now. Like, it's like saying that, like, you're worried about a Marvel movie because they have outside prop houses making props for the thing, but that's everybody does that. I think the more accurate analogy.
No, I'm more concerned about separate teams making big chunks of the game that then get snapped together into the whole of the game.
I don't think they're making. I think that's unusual. I mean, it makes more sense if you're talking about like a shooter with multiple modes.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about like a God of War thing, I don't think anybody's making individual levels on their own. Or like, you're talking about cleanup. You're talking about honing and tweaking, and that's busy work basically.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's fine.
Pays the bills. Not very fun, but it pays the bills.
Like, I think maybe a comparison would be the difference between Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, where like Lord of the Rings was meticulously planned, had storyboards out the ass. Like, you know, they did 3 years of pre-production on that thing. Everybody knew from the production documents exactly what they were doing, no matter how removed from Peter Jackson they were. Mm-hmm. Whereas with The Hobbit, that was all done on the fly. People were literally getting phone calls from Peter Jackson to the second unit of the day they were shooting to tell them what they were doing. Like, that's the key, is like, you have to have some kind of central hub. There has to be a spider in the middle pulling all the strings, and if you don't have that, you're going to end up with chaos. And and maybe you can blame that on having multiple teams, but usually it's because there's no clear vision of what you're trying to make. And it really does sound like maybe Perfect Dark is maybe running into that. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine that's the necessary problem with Call of Duty, just in the sense that everybody knows what they're making when they're making a Call of Duty. It might be soulless and by the numbers, but you are still making Call of Duty.
You're still making zombies mode.
Everybody's pretty much on the same page what this needs to be.
Yeah.
Which is one reason I am so intrigued by what happened with Battlefield 2042, because you'd think they'd have that down by now. Multiple teams or not, you'd think everybody would know what a Battlefield looks like now.
Yeah.
And they don't even have a scoreboard or voice chat in that thing. What?
I don't know. It just seems like if you take a single task and you split it into multiple jobs, you're just creating more opportunities for things to get screwed up.
Well, that's where the disconnect.
I mean, that's just simple math.
That's where the disconnect for me is, because making a video game is not a single task; it's 1,000 tasks.
Well, but it is one task. Creating a video game.
You're still doing
is
the
one
same
task.
You're doing the same thing on a single team. You're breaking
and
up
it's going to get broken up into
people.
parts. But when you're adding teams, it's broken up into even more parts.
Right, but
and that's just more opportunities for us, more employees with an opportunity to screw up. Like, I don't know.
Naughty Dog does it too.
Yeah. I think you're right, though. I think the chain of command is really important. Because if your chain of command and your communication isn't good, you're basically turning game development into that old game we used to play in grade school, where you'd sit in a circle and the teacher would say something in your ear and you'd repeat it to the person next to you, and you come back around and it's completely changed. Mm-hmm. And that's the potential of what can happen.
Skinner says the teachers will break at any minute. Purple Monkey Dishwasher.
Exactly.
Yeah, but like that's theoretically what Slack and Discord, all these, that's the primary thing you have to solve. Is what we used email for back in the day.
Yeah, the tech platforms help for sure.
And for bigger things, you got to do that. It's like that's why we used to team up all the different show teams for E3 back in the day.
Yeah,
and that generally worked, but you needed a central hub of leadership.
Yeah, and a good leadership.
And that's I think it's not a coincidence that you didn't notice that multiple teams worked on God of War because you had Sony Santa Monica and Cory Barlog sort of at the center of that. Whereas if you're answering to Ubisoft Paris or some vague Microsoft head entity about Perfect Dark, maybe you're not getting the same idea. Maybe no one knows what it should be. Maybe they just know they want this. We want a new Perfect Dark game. Okay, what is that? I don't know. You figure it out.
Yeah,
like that's where you run into the problem. That was
now Crystal Dynamics has figured it out.
Crystal Dynamics makes games that star women. They can figure it out. I was like, it might be that dumb. Like,
it might be. They're right though. They made Tomb Raider. They can handle Perfect Dark.
Yeah, I can handle Joanna Dark. No problem.
Do you think Perfect Dark's going to become a Tomb Raider clone?
I can think of worse
ideas. It's possible.
Ideas,
it's not a terrible idea.
No.
Not a terrible idea.
Breaking away from the first-person shooter mode would maybe be the best thing for it.
Maybe.
Third-person action RPG stuff.
Unlike PlayStation, they don't need more shooters. So.
No, they really don't.
Yep. Okay. All right. It's time for Name That Game, people, where I give you a set of clues and you try to guess the name of the game. You are competing against this guy, Matt Kyle, who's really good at this, but you have a huge advantage over him. You can use Google and the internet. He just has to use his brain. So typically, you guys win. Even if he does come up with the answer of the game before you, I will look over and give you guys a couple beats to get the answer into the chat. If it doesn't show up, Matt wins. So I have 5 clues today. Let me just get the sound rolling here for Name That Game. If you win, you get a set of sifted stickers, and I'll ship them anywhere in the world. I just sent out a huge batch yesterday. We were backlogged by like 4 episodes. So if you have won in the last 4 or 5 episodes of GameFace, stuff's on the way. It was just sent out yesterday. But I was so backed up from the holidays and then coming home, and there's all this private stuff that's been going on with my family lately anyway, stuff you don't care about. But anyway, if you win, we'll ship the stickers anywhere. So it doesn't matter where you live. Antarctica, we like to often point to. But anywhere in the world, we'll ship them to you so everybody can play. Everyone can win. All right. Are you ready, Matt?
Yep.
All right, here comes the first clue. And again, there are 5 clues. They become more obvious as they go. The first one is usually very obtuse, hard to understand what it's supposed to mean, and then they get more obvious as we go. The first clue is... Let me get the chat up here, actually, on the screen. Driven by conspiracy theories, it's more apt today than ever. Driven by conspiracy theories, it's more apt today than ever.
We already did Siphon Filter.
We did. That Saber got it already. You actually were very close, though. You almost beat him. Yeah. Everyone's getting these on the first clues anymore. Yeah, he got it. Zet Saber, congratulations. Actually, I'm glad to see you win, man. You've been a supporter of ours for a really long time. I really like to see when people who have been with us since like our beta in 2015 win stuff. So that's good, dude. I'm glad that you won it. You've been a great supporter, dude. Thank you so much for everything you've done across the years. So Zet Saber got it. It was Deus Ex. That's all it took. Just talking about conspiracy theories, and that it makes more sense today than it did then. Here's the rest of the clues, just for fun. I'll bring the camera back here. It started a subgenre. That was the second clue. The third clue was cyber nano insanity, because it was a cyberpunk and all about nanotechnologies. The fourth clue was, when it released over 20 years ago, it was considered a specter of madness. Obviously, Warren Spector built the game. And then the final clue, which is basically me just telling you guys what it is, an immersive sim before there were immersive sims. And that would have obviously given it away. So congratulations, Zet Saber. Send us a DM. You can send it here on Twitch. You're on Sifted all the time. You can send me a DM at Shane on sifted.net. Or you can send me a DM on Twitter. I'm at Dinfire. Any of those places works. Just make sure you give me your full real name, which I don't think I do know your full real name, even though I've really kind of known you for like 6 years at this point. Your full address. Make sure you include every detail about your address. Postal code, province, any of that kind of stuff. It'll make sure it gets to you as quickly as possible. So there you go. Congratulations, Zet Saber. Good job on the first clue. I'm getting really bad at this, apparently. It's 2 weeks in a row. on the first clue that somebody guessed it. So, sorry guys, I try to make it fun, but I can only do so much. All right, let's see if we got some Q&A here. If you want to ask us a question, go at Sifted Games. There's already some of them in here, actually. ETH Demon, that was easy, Shane. I knew it, but don't want stickers. What gave it away? Because aren't there tons of games about conspiracy theories?
Yeah, but Deus Ex was originally subtitled The Conspiracy.
Was it? I thought it had some other name.
Some packaging had conspiracy on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly one of the first things I thought of.
Interesting.
Although, like, when you talk about relevant to today, the first thing I think is virus, so my mind went to Siphon Filter.
Well, there's a virus in Deus Ex.
In Deus Ex,
yeah. It has a pandemic. I mean, Deus Ex actually is kind of exactly what's going on right now. Mm-hmm. It's pretty bizarre and crazy. All right, let's get to some questions here before we run out of time, and we are running out of time. Barry Lomax, he said it before you even read the clue. LOL. Who said that?
No, he was lagging. He said it after you said the clue.
Yeah, to me, his answer showed up after the clue. Your stream may be behind or lagging. Gino Mike, thank you. Love to hear the rest of the clues, Shane. You always do a great job. Thanks, man. I need some positive reinforcement. Nolan Elric, hey Matt, will the new place have the Transformers showcase?
I didn't move. I helped someone move.
Yeah, oh yeah, he didn't move. He helped someone else move into the new place. Yeah, he's still there, and he still has his Transformers showcase there. Slagathor, how much knowledge of game development do you feel you need to possess in order to be a journalist commentator on video games? That's a good question, actually.
Honestly, probably zero.
Yeah, I don't think any.
Like,
I know people don't want to hear this, but
yeah, like you don't need to know how a movie's made to know whether to be a movie critic.
Yeah,
it can help with insight and kind of understanding where things are coming from or why they are the way they are. But yeah, I don't think it really matters as long as you. It's more important to be able to write and formulate like your impressions into something cohesive.
I would argue it may be better to know nothing about game development because it could affect your opinion of just whatever it is that you're evaluating, knowing how it was actually made. Mm-hmm. I try to just evaluate games, just put it on my desk and let me play it, and that's that.
I don't know how useful it would be to know that much anyway, because most of the people you're reviewing this for don't know.
Right. Yeah. So how do they even relate? It wouldn't. I don't think it would help your reviews be better. I think it would only make them worse.
Like it probably helps for if you're going to be like a Jason Schreier kind of thing, like where you're like reporting on pre-production stuff and rumors, and you got to know what.
That's a good point.
Helps to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. Yep. Where you're like, what's worth reporting, what's just normal procedure that maybe people don't always know about.
Yep.
Yeah, in terms of being like a commentator, I guess so. Like it helps, but like we don't know that much.
I think it helps you realistically understand how long it may take for a game to be finished and released, stuff like that. It can be helpful.
Yeah, although I don't know much about game development, and I know that pretty well.
Yeah, you can just follow the industry, and after a while, you just kind of figure it out. Yeah, good question, though, Slagathor. Really good one. JM Rain 99, would you like some help playing through Elden Ring? I love From's games.
That's a fine person to throw yourself on that grenade.
I'm still formulating my plan for Elden Ring. I will get back to you when I have something figured out. I think I'm probably going to do some streaming of Elden Ring. I don't want to make a big commitment where I have to do it like every day or even every 3 days. Maybe it becomes this thing where like every Saturday afternoon I stream like an hour or two of me trying to get through it. But it'll be interesting because I'll have to get through X amount of it before I talk about it on GameFace, and I'm not going to stream it before I do that. So anyway, I'll figure it all out. But if I do need help, like I hope you guys will show up for the streams and like help me along. You guys did it a couple times for the first Dark Souls, and I was trying to play through that. I would say like a lot of times I don't know that it helped, because the problem is the quotient of people that make fun of me is way higher than the quotient of people who are just trying to help. Mm-hmm. And the chat, it just gets lost. It's like just everyone like, ha ha, look at Shane, watch Shane fail. Oh, that's really dumb. I can't believe you did it. These are people that have played the game like 8 times or whatever. And I'm going through it like my first time, and they're just mean. And so it's not very encouraging, to be honest with you. And a lot of times that's why I quit playing, because people just sat and made fun of me. And it's like, F you. Like, obviously I'm putting myself out here to play this game in front of you. I don't really like it, but you guys requested it. And you requested it, so you basically, it turns out, so you can make fun of me. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So
welcome to the internet.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know why it's surprising to me. I think I'd look at our community a little different, and then sometimes I get surprised.
Well, luckily, no one's played Elden Ring 8 times.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I bet you a lot of people will finish it by the time I start playing through it. Okay, so anyway, that's the best I can tell you. Matt, MQMT, Matt's quick movie take. Brief comment on numerical grade for the following. No, we're not doing all these. We'll just do The Matrix. What do you think of The Matrix?
I like The Matrix a lot.
I did not like it a lot.
7.5 out of 10.
7.5 you give it?
Yeah.
I'd probably give it like a 5. I didn't think it was very good. It just seemed like it didn't even belong in the same like property. It was this weird like fourth wall. We know The Matrix was a popular thing, and now we're gonna act like it just was weird. I thought.
Yeah, well, they've always been weird.
Yeah, but good weird. Like the first one was really good weird.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's much better than the sequels.
I would say I did enjoy it more than the sequels. I will agree with that.
It's a surprisingly personal film. Like I think Lana Wachowski is basically telling her story in that. It's about the reconciliation of the masculine and feminine side, and I mean it's not a slam bang action Matrix sequel. It is very much a continuation of the trans narrative that was there in the first movie as subtext, and now it's just pretty much text.
It's obvious. Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. I mean, that's a very inventive and kind of brave way to make a sequel to one of the most influential sci-fi films of all time. I understand why people didn't quite get, if you're going and looking for like amazing revolutionary action like the first movie presented, it wasn't really there. And I thought there's some good stuff in there, but I do think it was shot a little too close. A lot of the action stuff.
It's hard to follow.
It wasn't really. Also, they didn't have time to. They didn't really have time to rehearse everything as much as they needed to, partly because of Keanu's schedule and probably some of the lockdown stuff. But so I think it flags there. But overall, I thought it was a really cool kind of reinvention of things. The meta stuff, it didn't bother me at all. I thought that was very funny. A lot of it.
I wasn't offended by it.
Also because I
sat and watched the whole thing.
Also because that pretty much is why that movie exists, because they were going to make a fourth one, Hell or High Water, whether Lana was involved or not, and she decided that I'm going to be involved because I don't want someone getting their hands all over my story. Yeah. And maybe people think that she ruined it too, but at least she did it her way.
I agree with you. I thought it's better than the sequels. So that's better than.
It definitely seemed to know what it was more than the sequels. The sequels always had a feeling of like, oh, I guess we got to make 2 more. The Matrix sequels have always sort of reminded me of the Back to the Future sequels, where it's just like you didn't want to make these really, you didn't expect to have to make them, but you had to make them, or someone else is going to make them, so you better make them, and that's what you came up with on the fly, kind of thing.
Mellowak, any comments on Phil Spencer pitching Steam Deck as the Xbox Switch? I actually didn't see that.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
It's smart.
I mean, yeah, sure.
I mean, because it's not just about Xbox for Phil; it's about PC as well. So yeah, it makes total sense. Like, why wouldn't he? I think most people look at Steam Deck as the PC Switch or the Steam Switch. I think it makes sense that he would do that. Cinetyke, I see your questions about consolidation. We basically talked about that for an hour at the beginning of the show when we talked about Bungie being purchased by PlayStation. Sneaky Charlotte Snake, how you doing, brother? I returned Pokemon for not having the main that I use. Have you ever not played a game for a stupid reason? I mean, I can't think of too many games I just wouldn't play.
No.
The dumbest reason I would not play a game is because it was just terrible. That's pretty much it. And that's not really a dumb reason.
I think there's definitely been a few games I just stopped playing because I just hated how they looked, but I can't remember what they were right now. Like sometimes an art style can turn me off so much I just don't want to look at it anymore.
I don't like the art style in Psychonauts, but the damn game's so good that I just trudge forward. So no, I think you're on an island on that one, Sneaky. How did you take that to the counter and be like, they don't have my Pokemon. I want my money back.
I assume like one of.
How do you even know he's not in there if you didn't play it? Like, how did you know that? Have they already released a list of all the Pokemon in Arceus?
I assume they know. I haven't looked for it, but
I just assume eventually I'll come across.
If you want Charmander, one of the original starters, you're not going. They don't start with it. So.
Yeah, you'd have to. Work
it might be in there somewhere. I don't know. Like I'm not sure.
Here's a good one from the Legacy. If It Takes Two wins an Oscar, what will Joseph Ferris say or do?
I mean, the good news there is that he would not be anywhere near the stage. Because he would probably not be a producer or anything on that.
Yeah. That's funny.
But that would be an interesting,
Next level, why isn't Sony marketing Ghostwire Tokyo more? I know, it's coming out next month, according to reports released today.
I mean, you could argue that they have Sifu and Horizon to market first, and Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
Like, there's a non-zero chance that Ghostwire gets basically buried or moved.
I would also argue that, like, they didn't know it was coming out.
Yeah.
It's been, like, nebulous. Nobody really knew when the game was going to be released.
Yeah, I'm not certain that, like, it's coming. That date feels kind of fake to me.
I mean, honestly,
I know it's been circulated widely, but, like,
yeah.
I feel like that's probably...
Bethesda, I think it's supposed to come out last year initially, and then when they delayed it out of last year, Bethesda set, like, a hard date for this year. So, to me, I agree with you. I felt the same way. I felt like nobody knew what was going on with it. But if you go back and look, like, Bethesda has actually been really honest about it and did set dates. So I do think it's coming out. I just think that maybe Sony doesn't think it's worth marketing with their marketing dollars. And I feel like Sony maybe just wasn't convinced that the thing was going to get done because it's been completely underground. Has anyone
remember
seen
that, like,
a chunk of it being played yet?
Not a spit. But also remember that, like, mainstream advertising for games doesn't start until a month before they come out. It's too soon.
Yeah.
It's too soon for mainline advertising on that.
We'll do maybe one more, if there is another one. Last one. Threadzilla. How long until Game Pass raises its monthly subscription price? Do you think that's going to happen, Matt?
Not anytime soon.
No?
No.
I honestly don't know what the normal price is because, like, I got in on, like,
$15 a month.
A crazy cheap deal, and then, like, I got it for, like, $1 for the first few months, and then I only got it for PC for the first month, and then I got Ultimate. How much is Game Pass Ultimate a month? Is it 13 or 15?
I think it's 13 or 15 a month. I can't remember. I think it's 15.
So, you think it'll go up over 15 a month and go past Netflix?
They would have to
That's
have
a big break point
They have
there.
to have a really good reason for that. You would have to have a really good upcoming game to force that. You'd basically do a deal with it, and then, like, it would pop up to that full price like 3 months later. I think it would be that thing where you trap somebody and they forget to cancel it. Columbia
Auto renew.
The Columbia Music House system. I don't know. I don't think it'll happen anytime soon. I could see it happening for, like, Elder Scrolls 6.
Some big landmark release that
Like,
they know everybody's going to want to play. Not Starfield?
I don't think I think Starfield's a new unknown quantity.
Yeah.
I mean, it's too new.
They could get away with it maybe, though.
They could try it, but I don't think it'd be wise.
Yeah. When do you think it will go up? Because Netflix, at this point, every year it goes up $1.
That's because Netflix doesn't have a revenue model.
And Netflix is in deep crap.
Yep.
Just like, I'll say this, Pachter was right
Yep.
all along.
Yes, he was.
All these analysts who are slagging him, because he said all along Netflix was a sham. He's like, there's no way they're making money. There's no way that their stock should be this high. And sure enough, he was right.
The revenue they're pulling in is not equal to the literal billions they're spending on production. It made no sense. It never made any sense.
Yep. So anyway, Netflix does it every
wondered
year.
what their end game was, and it turned out that they didn't really have one.
Oh, Vincent says Ultimate is $15 a month. Base Game Pass is $10 a month. So there you go. And there you go for GameFace episode 287. Matt, we're coming up on episode 300.
Yeah.
That's insane. It's crazy. 300 episodes, 3 hours apiece. How many hours of gaming content we've done just on this show alone? It's pretty amazing. And thanks to you guys, we can keep doing it. We really appreciate it. But to keep doing it, we need your support. Head to patreon.com/sifted. If you're watching this show on YouTube or you're listening to it out on any of the podcast services, and it's on all of them. And in fact, if you're a YouTube user and you would prefer to just get the show on your phone so you can listen to it with your AirPods or whatever, just search any of your favorite podcast services. It's there.
That's 37 and a half days
of gaming content
GameFace.
we've done for GameFace. That's amazing. But anyway, we want to keep doing it, but we need your support. We're supported 100% by Patreon. So head on over there, drop us a pledge. If you want all our content early, it's $4 a month. Right now, I think we're the cheapest game in town. Everybody else has jacked up their monthly price as far as the big gaming Patreons are concerned. We've stayed steady. We've been on Patreon for 4 years now. We've never increased our price. But we need your help. So if you're watching the show on YouTube, please consider pledging on Patreon. And if you can't do that, head down to the description of the show and you can find out how to help us for free by subscribing to our Twitch channel with Twitch Prime. Again, down in the description, all the instructions. It takes a minute or two to hook it up the first time, and after that, it's just 2 clicks to renew every month. So, on behalf of Matt, we're going to have another big show next week. We're going to have another big game to play. Couple big games maybe this week, actually, for next week's show. Yeah.
Well, Dying Light.
Yeah. The whole rest of the month, like, we just put up Dossier for February, wall-to-wall, 10 games worth buying easily. There were really like 13 or 14. I had to cut like 4 off of it. So this is a great month. I hope you saved your money. I hope you still have your gift cards from Christmas. That's really what you want to do. Spend all those cards that you got from family members or friends. But we'll be back here next Tuesday at twitch.tv/SiftedGames at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Until then, GameFace is up and out.